This is Jason Bosch, and I am here with Allison McDowell.
Hello, evening everybody.
So this is actually part three of this series. I've been going through clips from this ASU GSV summit that happened in, I think it was San Diego where it happened. But ASU is Arizona State University, and GSV is Global Silicon Valley, which is an investment bank that invests in a lot of ed tech. So yeah, so this one is kind of focused on this concept of lifelong learning, and I learned about this from you, Allison. I'd never heard of that term
On the
before.
ledger. Yeah.
Lifelong learning on the ledger. So yeah, I've got some clips. It's just some random clips that tie in with this concept, and so this
Well, and
first.
for people who watched the last one that you did, or no, maybe it was two before, but there was a lot about it wasn't so much about K-12 education or even higher education, but like workforce development. So like
Right.
once you had a job, like managing your human capital, like through so that's really kind of what the lifelong learning is about, is that we never actually get off of, and not that we stop learning, like we naturally, people get, hopefully, like unless you just become really rigid and you don't learn anything new, optimally we should all be learning throughout our lives, but this is literally being to learning under surveillance, so learning in performing our learning in front of a machine so the machine can capture it, which is something that hasn't really happened before.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, this first one is actually about early childhood education. But yeah, the point is to extend this learning throughout your whole life. But it does start, once you're,
Womb to tomb.
yeah, exactly. They
I mean,
want this. They
oh,
want
sorry.
this ledger to be being built, from an early stage. So I just thought I would start with some of the early stuff, but then I kind of go into higher ed, and then I go into the workforce learning. So um, let's see. Let me bring this up here, and we've got 5 viewers. Hi, everybody. Okay, I'll just start this, and we can stop. I'll stop it at points here. So
No
And
one
can I
cares.
just,
yeah, go for it.
I can't see it. Is it
Oh
going to
yeah,
be so I can see
no,
it?
I'm sorry. Good,
No, that's
good
okay. All
idea.
right.
Bring the video up on the screen, but let me bring you up on the screen as well. No, no, disappear you. There we go. All right,
Okay.
we got it all dialed. Sorry about that. Okay.
No one cares about fidelity more than a licensed clinician. And, that clinician, it doesn't have to be in the room to direct everything that's going to happen in the interaction. So whether it's a parent or another caregiver or a classroom aide, you don't have to know the frameworks. You have to be able to follow direction and be willing to listen and follow the lead of the clinician, and it works surprisingly well.
So I'll stop right there. You don't need to actually know anything. You just need to know how to follow directions, and the clinician doesn't even need to be in the room. Uh, what do you think of that,
Wow.
Allison?
Well, I remember when Lynn and I were, again, in our education phase. And at the time there was like, there's a charter school chain that I think, actually this guy, the Gulen Charter Schools, is like, they're Turkish, and it's connected to this weird sort of religious thing in Turkey. Not that people of Turkey are weird, but like this particular guy is like a super rich guy who hides out in the Poconos and sets up these charter schools. And then they bring in international teachers who actually don't even speak English. So at the time, some of these charter schools were having the teachers have coaches in their ear. So they would have an earpiece that would like tell them what to do, literally. And it
Wow.
seemed so bizarre at the time that, I guess it's probably not unlike a coach, like a football coach or something. And then you both have these ear receivers and you tell like the quarterback or something like what they should be doing. But it seemed so strange at the time that that was a bizarre practice that, it was totally deprofessionalized, and you were essentially just a meat-based vehicle for some distant other thing, like you're like a puppet, like a meat puppet for something else. And I don't know I don't have the full context for this, but, and again, a
Right.
clinician, that's like a management tool type of sort of thing. it's not warm. Like if they're talking about early childhood education, like do you want to place your child in a place where that's full of remote clinicians?
Right. Yeah, and it seems like they're removing the role of the teacher to a large extent with this whole process. And they're like, you just need to follow instructions. And then the person cannot be in the room. And she said the word fidelity too, which I kind of perked up. I know the word, but I just was like, I'm going to look up the actual definition of it. And it was basically just saying that, a strict adherence to, the duties. I can't actually read this one.
Promises and duties.
Yeah.
Adherence to fact or detail. Accuracy. And I've known about that like for a while, because the imperative in the education space was that teachers, because it's about the data, right? And at the time when we were first looking at this, we didn't know about digital twins or predictive modeling or simulation technologies. I mean, that much. Like that wasn't something that we centered, but we knew that the data economy was built on digital flows of information about people, and that teachers, human beings, were never going to be able to collect enough data to fulfill the voracious demands of the data economy. And so in that way, the technology had to come between the humans, because the technology would be able to achieve collection of data with fidelity in a way that a human being never could. Either because it was simply not tenable in a classroom of 33 children to get that much data, or for the fact that a human being would realize that it was a bad idea and just simply undermine the system and not do it. And so that's the imperative for like having children be independent learners with machines, is to get that data, not only for the data economy, which is what I initially thought, but also to build out the digital twins.
Yeah. One data had the two meanings were just like, the accuracy and, but it was also about loyalty. And so I think about that in terms of agency. This is a loyalty and making sure you're going by the protocol. So I think that's another big piece of it, is that, these protocols are set up and they want it to be a top-down thing where everybody's going by the same sets of protocols. You don't want some rogue teacher like going off on their own, teaching something that's not, kosher or whatever. So I think that has a lot to do with it.
Because like when the children have to have their 2000 badges, that tiny micro nano badge will be missing, because that day they decided to read a class novel instead of like teaching to the standard. And like, we didn't understand at the time why you would use these standards, why it was so rigid, why. And because we didn't know about globotics, we didn't know about remote work. And so like, that's what's coming next, is that we're going to be, that's what the standards are for. It's for the prediction modeling and it's for the remote work. And we're like, well, this doesn't make any sense. It's not human. And I think for the most part, many people are just thinking, well, this still doesn't make any sense, because they don't know why we're doing it.
Yeah. Okay. So let's do some more here.
We're focused on screener and diagnostic integrated assessment. That's the first thing.
So diagnostic, screening and diagnostics.
We do that because teachers need to understand where the kids are when they come into the classroom, the prerequisite skills. Are they ready for grade level? So that first thing is identification and giving the teachers the tool they need from a screener and diagnostic perspective, the insight. Second is data-driven insight. We provide teacher, because at the end of the day, the teachers know best how to address those shortcomings. So provide them with the insight, easy to use data-driven insight, so that they're able to see where those students are from a prerequisite skills perspective, but also continuing to administrate those in middle and end of the year. The third one is personalized learning with targeted intervention. So what I mean by that is taking in the data that's coming in, leveraging technology again, leveraging the data from the assessment, and then the assessment, the screener, which is given to all kids at the beginning of the year.
Somebody says there's no audio.
Then that provides you for those who need.
Okay, let me figure this out. I apologize, everyone. I was worried about this. If anybody else is getting no audio, let me know. Let me check here. That's weird. You were hearing it though, right, Allison?
I was hearing it for you, but I opened the window, a second window to look and see at the chat, but somebody just said there's no, but
Oh, okay.
I don't, if you want to mute me for a second, I can try to listen and see if I thought I was getting audio on this other window.
Yeah. Go ahead and test it out, Allison, and then
Okay.
I muted you. So if you want to test out the audio and see if you can hear me. Someone else hears the audio. So maybe this is just a problem on the end of Jen. Maybe that's a problem with your laptop or computer. Maybe try opening another thing. Everybody else has audio. So let me tell me if you have audio with the
Those
video.
who have,
Are you getting audio on
who
this?
need deeper diagnostic.
Are you guys hearing audio
they get the
right now?
diagnostic, and it gives you a map.
Yes, no audio.
At the skill level, where in terms of
Okay. So, well, let me know if you guys have other problems. I'm going to unmute you, Allison. And
Okay.
so I'll go back, and I'm recording this, so I'll create another. What is going on here? Let me open this up here. Okay, so sorry about that, you guys. Yeah, it might have just been an issue on that person's end. So let me carry on.
Okay.
then that provides you for those who have who need deeper diagnostic. They get the diagnostic, and it gives you a map at the skill level where, in terms of the need each student has, truly personalized, and then we have the technology that provides a prescriptive capability to address the lessons, the instruction, the practices, adaptive practice. And the teacher is able to ultimately use this information and prescribe it to individual students. So that is kind of how we come back. And the end result is a 360-degree view of a student's learning journey throughout the school year.
So yeah, I love these phrases. The learning journey. How exciting is that? That sounds like fun.
It sounds terrible.
But then she also talks in these clinical language diagnosis and prescription. We're going to prescribe, and then it's kind of like we tell the teacher what to prescribe too. Like there's the role of the teacher is kind of basically just there to administer the prescription that was handed down. That's what it seems like she's saying.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other thing is that I keep asking is that, and what I saw in the education space was, especially like all of the school districts were graded then on this data, and they had the dashboards, and then schools were closed or, had interventions pushed on them based on the data dashboards. And it was all done in the name of like equity and diversity and everything. But the kids who probably most needed a human being were the ones that got punished and put on devices more and more and more to get more and more data. And, but like, there's no fudge factor. There's not like, well, I wasn't a great reader in elementary school, but I had a really inspiring middle school teacher, and we read these books, and then I really sped up. Like, everyone is supposed to be at the same place at the same time, and everyone is supposed to have every skill. And so this idea of us being individualized thinkers who have our own strengths and weaknesses, like, you're not allowed to have any of that, because everything is granular to this tiniest detail. You can't be like, yeah, you're getting it. You're like not the strongest reader. You're not the strongest in math, but you're making progress, right? And we have these larger things like, yeah, at the end of the semester, we'll give you a letter grade, but it's not excruciating. Like these prescriptions are almost like on a daily basis, you're going to have a prescription for some sort of micro unit that you did or didn't do. And essentially, I think what's happening is they're going to create like completely psychologically damaged children, because they won't have any like their whole sense of time, their whole self-perspective. It's all going to be warped by this thing, because what they're looking for is a widget that will reconform as programmable matter for some globotic labor force.
Yeah.
But we're not being honest. Like, none of those people up there are being honest about like the economy that they're going to expect these 3-year-olds to occupy when they become 25.
Yeah, and it's also important to know, like, they represent different companies who are, invested in this and stand to make, make profit off of it. So, like, in terms of there's a bias that's built right into the right at the get-go. So,
I mean, and the other thing that's important to remember about the teachers is when I've talked about human capital markets. So the children are a human capital market, but in the lifelong learning paradigm, the teachers and the service providers are also part of a vertical in the market, right? So they're going to be framing the teachers as lifelong learners, right? But for them, that means how well do you follow the directions when you have, a hear pod in your ear that's telling you what to do? And your compliance to that outside direction is how you're valued as a human capital asset, whether you're a teacher or a social worker or a school nurse or a clinician or a fitness or a nutritionist. Like any of those people are also going to be units. And that's what I really want to emphasize to people. Like there's no one that's outside the reach of this thing. They're leveraging and nesting it all together.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I was also thinking about, they talk about the personalized learning thing. And I was thinking like, well, they want personalized learning for homogenized outcomes.
Yes.
This isn't like about creating a whole bunch of unique individuals. This is about the end.
Right.
The end game is that, the pathway is laid out, and they realize that different people have different ways. They're going to have to use different tactics to get different people to where they want to get them. So I think that's an important thing.
Exactly. Homogenous. They want everybody to be exactly the same.
We work hard to develop solutions that meet students where they are, that accelerate them, that meet them where they are and accelerate their outcomes based on where they individually are and need to go. We work hard to develop solutions that are flexible, that meet the individual needs of the teacher who's in the room, the person in the room who needs to be supported in the moment to do the work that's necessary. And we develop solutions that are designed to support the administrators who need to support the people in the room doing the work. And we work hard to create academic measurement and assessment that allows not only the people in the room doing the work to do the work that needs to be done, but to inform decision makers about where funding needs to be invested in order to support the outcomes that we're striving for.
We have shifted.
So
is that on the video?
Yeah, so they had terrible. My camera just went out. I'm a little worried about my camera. It's been acting up lately, which scares me. Anyways, yeah. So the audio, the AV on this thing, you can even see the video is really terrible too. Like they just had. It was just like whoever did the audio AV on this thing was terrible. Which I'm just cringing the whole time. I tried to clean it up and tried to bring some of the voice levels up. Like the mics were going up and down, and I did some processing of the video to try to make it so you could at least understand what they were saying. But yeah, the quality of that was absolutely terrible.
But it's so funny because like all of this is technology, right? So they're acting as though there's this like seamless delivery vehicle that's like going to swoop in, and I'm like, you guys can't even do your videos right.
They can't even get they can't even get good AV set up. Yeah, pretty crazy. But yeah, the whole idea again, like this thing, this outside, the computer, the assistant or whatever, because there is a lot of talk about that outside clinician actually potentially being like an AI. So it seems like that's where they're moving us towards, which is
and they're just so calm about it. And for the most part, at least half the people up there are old enough. They're your age or a couple are my age, right? Like that they know what it actually meant to have a human-based education system. So for them to get up and sort of act as though what they're creating isn't an abomination, it's just like, I guess I just don't know what that does to your soul. Like to get up there and say it and act like it's normal.
Well, when these are professional conferences and you're surrounded by a whole bunch of people who are just like thinking, and so you're living in a bubble. There's no Alison McDowell in the room going, "Hey guys, what about this?" But it seems like even when there isn't an Alison and McDowell in the room doing that, it doesn't penetrate. So.
We have shifted to recognizing how much more important it is to evaluate and identify the student needs. And I am very worried about the potential for us to misidentifying at these early ages the cognitive, neurological, the disabilities that will need to be addressed and that aren't happening because while they're developmentally behind because they weren't interacting in the same way in a school. I think there's a lot of
I know what we can do about that.
Oh,
We can put sensors in their shoes and we can watch them with an AI camera and we can make sure that they're on task with their social behaviors.
yeah, yeah.
And then if they don't, we can put a neuro helmet on their head and rewire their brain, personalized,
Yeah.
so they can all be the same.
When she's here talking about, like, we want to make sure we don't want to misidentify them, but she also goes into, and I'll go into it here in a sec, but how, like, that there are a lot of people with disabilities that need to be identified so we can give them the assistance that they need. And so it's a lot about, it has a lot to do with tagging them, like, okay, this person, this is what they have. And this has been going on. We saw, like, the role of big pharma in identifying all of these, syndromes for different problems that students have that a lot of times were just kind of like normal. Like you would expect, like a kid not wanting to be able to pay attention because they didn't get sleep the night before they get up morning, go to class. I mean, I was totally like spaced out half the time in school, but I'm a smart kid. And luckily I'm really grateful that my mom didn't, they wanted to give me, whatever drugs, Ritalin or whatever. And she said no. And I'm really grateful for that. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of the next step. It's like, we need to, slap the label on you so we can prescribe these solutions.
Well, the other thing is like, it's beyond the profit center of the solution is the impact finance. And we're seeing this with a lot of bills around like dyslexia. So they'll do an early identification and maybe pull in kids that never would have developed the problem. And a lot of these are like neurological and with eye tracking devices and things that are, it's not like, you're in second grade and the teacher knows that there's a few kids that are struggling readers, and then to pull them out and give them more time, or then maybe the few that really need it, then get them identified and get them the special services that they need. Like in the school district of Philadelphia, what would happen is, for the most part, the children who needed an IEP, they didn't get them. Like the school district would do everything they could to not give the kids the services that they were entitled to under the law. And then the families that had the resources to like bring them to court, then they would pay. Like if you had the wherewithal to bring them to court, but they were willing to like not let lots of kids get the services because they figured that most of the parents wouldn't have the ability to bring them to court. And so that was just a cost of doing business, were the court fees, so that you could keep the things down. And Lynn talks about that in Texas, that they had a cap on special education. And this is also feeding into like the whole autism spectrum stuff. There's like a lot more special needs kids because of, I think, a lot of damage from environmental toxins and other things. So like, it's this idea that we're somehow going to do early identification to help children. That's not what it's about. It's what you said, is to label them and then to feed those predictive labels into the impact finance. So imagine like you've got a dyslexia app with some eye tracking. I was looking at those, and a couple years ago, we did a whole thing with Lynn and that guy, Andy, the What's Left people. And like if you can screen kids into a program, then you're making money on the program. But even if the kid might not have developed dyslexia, like you can fix them preemptively and then make the deal work. So there's an incentive to medicalize and identify as many kids as possible, as early as possible. Like that's the early intervention. They want to label them as early as possible so they can start getting them in on the deals.
Yeah, for sure. I see Lynn on the thing. Lynn, if you'd like to join us, send me a text and I'll send you a link, and you can jump in with us live.
I was just talking about the special education cap, Lynn, but you're more knowledgeable about that than I am.
Lynn, I'll send you a link. Feel free to jump on if you want, or you can just hang out in the chat. But I'll email you a link. So let me continue this on.
Opportunity to sort of mislabel things as happening because of COVID delays, and thinking that, we don't need to do anything now, we can wait and see, we can watch, we can develop out of it, when the reality is there's a tremendous number of children in our school systems who have disabilities that need to be addressed. And, I was talking to a leader of an autism services company earlier today, and he declared he believes every child should receive a neuropsych evaluation. And
my gosh,
that's
crazy!
I would love to have one common.
Okay. Hold on. Okay.
Oh,
I
well,
figured you'd
that's
enjoy
just
that
crazy. A
statement.
neuropsych evaluation, Lynn, if you're in there, it's the learn capital people. Here, put us on this brain training helmet. That's what they're saying. They're like, we should have these new systems where you get a brain tune up at your doctor's office annually. And I remember maybe 4 years ago, before all the lockdowns, and looking at like the especially the early childhood, because remember the impact finance stuff is prenatal, really up to third grade, early childhood education. And that's what Heckman is focused on. And they, in Tennessee particularly, they talked about building brains. Like Lynn knows about this, building baby brains. and you, it was like, who would talk about it like that? Well, they would talk about it like that if they want to put you in a neurological helmet and then tweak you to be an ant in their computer.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. No, it's
and
astounding.
the saddest thing is that like they pretend that they care, and they don't care.
I think they believe they care. I actually do. That's where I think that these people actually in their minds, like, people are amazing at fooling themselves. I think that they've justified this in their own minds and think that it's actually a good thing, but it's not, obviously. But yeah, that was a pretty astounding statement. By the way, Lynn says she can't, but she's listening.
Yeah.
Another time, Lynn. So
Would receive a neuropsych evaluation. And you know what? I think he's right. I would love to have one common behavior tracking system software
yes, I'm sure
that
you would.
every adult, every teacher, every counselor, everyone who's interacting with the child is seeing and adding to, so that we can see the risks sooner and
See the
help
risks?
everybody along
See
the
the
path
risks
see
sooner?
what needs to be done.
So yeah, that's
Risk of what? Of wrong thinking?
yeah, and she wants everyone that interacts with the child to be able to enter data into this thing. That it's like one centralized thing where everyone's contributing. So this poor child is got like everyone that interacts with them.
And that's the twin. Like they're literally building the digital twin. That's what that is. And like, so think about it. Like if you're in school, I mean, the kid who's like, I don't know, in school, unhappy, acting out with certain, and again, even like with teachers, like there's some, I always remember when my kid was in school and there would be like, oh, they got the good teacher or the not good teacher. And the reality is that it's a dynamic of people with one another. So no one teacher is going to be the best teacher for all the kids, right? Like there's some teachers who are really good for this kind of kid, and the whole part of being human is that you learn to adjust, right? And some years you have years where you're really in sync with your teachers, and some years you don't. But that's kind of the lumps. Like that's just how it goes, right? But now with this personalization, like no one's going to have any good relationship. And I keep thinking about like the kid who maybe has like not a good experience with the classroom teacher, but they love choir after school, right? And maybe the person who's doing the choir after school program sees that kid in an entirely different light, or football or whatever it is, than the classroom teacher. And the classroom teacher writes, well, that kid's really, and I even remember reading like within grade level teachers that there would be some who would say like, when you move up a grade, that the teacher was supposed to write notes for the next teacher. But there were teachers who said, I don't want to know. Like, I don't want my perceptions of this child to be warped by what you say about this child.
Prejudging them on that.
Yes. Yeah. And that's a really important point.
Yeah. And that's what, and this goes back. It's like you're building your ledger is being built, and you're being judged all along the way, from your record, from all these different people contributing to it.
Well, it's funny. Somebody told me, and in reality, what's coming now with this digital stuff is that your representation of you can be fully inaccurate based on other people's perceptions recorded in a digital space that may not represent you at all. So like somebody just told me today, I guess that Celia Farber's like stirring the pot again, like with her crazy ant computer people. And like somehow she's made me the center of her thing again, because that's part of her modus operandi now, I guess. Or maybe she didn't, but she allowed her swarm to do their swarmy thing. So somewhere over there in a Substack, like there's whole sorts of things about me that really aren't about me at all. But it would get, if it's like everybody knows everything about everybody all the time, stuff that's not even real, or that's only real in the imagined delusions of somebody's mind, gets put into a thing, and then it's real.
Well,
Like,
even
you
at the
can't even-
workplace, I mean, I know I've been misjudged, as most people probably have, by someone that has a beef and whatever. You get, someone misjudges you. So, yeah, that's it's like there's a part later on, a clip that I have later on where they're talking about the workplace, but he was talking about alchemy, and he was like, different people interact differently with one another, and so if we can imagine, if we can team people up together, because we know that it's this person plus this person creates something greater than each of them by themselves. So
It's like
there's
a
even.
recipe.
Yeah.
I want a stupid recipe or a magic or something.
We put a little bit of Allison, a little bit of Cecilia.
Yeah, they're like, we need a doubt. We need a lighthearted vibe. We'll dial in Jason into 70% of that, like only 30% Allison.
And so
Yeah.
I guess we're going to announce here too, we're starting the Alice McDowell. No, I'm kidding.
Oh no.
All right, here we go.
My magic wand wish would be that we can wrap our arms around educators and administrators technologically so that they feel confident to do the work that needs to be done, and that the result of that is students feel confident in their learning journey, and that they have an opportunity, and that they have a future, and that they can see a pathway forward.
They want to
Cybernetic.
wrap their arms around you technologically.
Did she say something about my magic wish or something like that?
Yeah, well,
Like,
I cut it out, but there's a part where they ask, like, what would you, if you had a magic wand, like, what would you want to see happen?
See,
And so-
I'm feeling like a lot of this stuff is being layered in here. That's really weird.
There are other talks where they talk about, like, if I had a magic wand, like everybody,
Like a Merlin mind. If
Yeah,
our
there's
Merlin mind was in the room. We could
it's
use our
actually a
magic wand.
theme that was present in more than one of the talks. So
Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I haven't. It's part of that Foundation for Integrated Education piece that I didn't put out yet. But MIT was working on like a brain neuro headband, like outside the brain, right? And they would put it in a hat, and so you put the funny hat on, but the sensors would be embedded in the hat, and it was like for little kids, and it was executive function, like you were supposed to focus on things and move things around remotely.
Oh yeah,
but they would put it in a Harry Potter hat. Is there something called like a sorting hat or something like that?
Oh right.
Like, I don't know, anybody on there that does Harry Potter. I think there's some hat in Harry Potter that kids all know because, again, it's archetypal. And so they would bury, like MIT would bury the sensors things in the hat so the kids would wear it. And it was like a magic hat, right? And so I think they really are using some of this. And I always liked fantasy books. Like, I'm not against fantasy books, but
Yeah,
they're really messing things up.
yeah, I agree.
From an actual technological capability perspective, I think we're closer than a magic wand would indicate, because I think we're doing the hard work. But think about what electronic medical records did for healthcare. Now, it wasn't a panacea. Tons of challenges and issues still exist.
Ruined
But
everything.
we don't even have that in education yet, with a unique student identifier for all students.
So unique student identifier for all students. Now, I'm if people understood that, like, they don't have all this stuff in place yet. So we've been saying for all this time, like, we have this window of opportunity to try to stop some of this from happening, but people aren't even paying any attention to it. And once these things are in place, it's going to be a lot harder to dismantle,
I know Lynn was working so hard on the OER stuff too. And
yeah.
And the thing is, like, it's these consultants and the business people, like, that's what Lynn and Mary have been fighting so hard against, who are running the districts, right? So you hear them saying, like, well, we'll teach the administrators how to do it. We'll teach the teachers how to do it. So essentially assuming you have a credentialed, and again, there's a whole credentialing issue, but like assuming you have, like if we as a society have decided that there is a proper way to do things and people have done that, then we say, well, you don't know anything anyway, so we'll just have the tech company tell you. And they're undermining people's own personal judgment.
Yeah.
And then they're creating so that if you go against what the companies tell you you have to do, like, Texas can be, amplify, they'll probably push you out.
Yeah. Well, and you can't go against it because all of this stuff costs money. And later on, like there's a panel that has a whole bunch of people that are basically the people that are doling out the foundations, doling out the money. Just the 4 people on this panel, I guess they said that they control $2 billion, and so, you're dependent on this money. So like, what are you going to, you're not going to say no, you're going to start your own, you're trapped.
And so when we think about the ability to deliver great experiences and great services and great opportunities to students, we have to think about how do we leverage the power of AI to identify and provide the data that's necessary to people providing those experiences and those services. And I think we're close, but we have more work to do.
So yeah, the AI and a piece of it too is another one that, I just did a whole thing. My previous one was all about the AI thing. So the next, the next one, it was called Investing in the Future of Non-Degree Paths. So this is just getting into kind of the shift.
Investing.
Yeah, investing in the future of non-degree paths. So,
and then this is all the middle skills, and I'm just guessing, but in advance. But it's important to know that, it's always the Hegelian dialectic, and so there's this profound emphasis on college. Well, it's college and career readiness. So I guess the career is the non-college path, and a lot of sort of the nonsense stuff in the schools around the standardized testing and like the certain emphasis on these certain standards and scores essentially set it up for people to say like, well, what about career and technical education? What about the people who would prefer not to go to a 4-year college, would prefer to follow some other path? And then for a long time that was squelched and diminished. And then you had like the, what's the name of that guy? He was so Dirty Jobs guy or whatever. Like he used to have a TV show like the Dirty Jobs, and they'd be like, America needs people that just do the work, like the basic work. Like, so we need to go back to this stuff. But the thing is, people aren't realizing that the new economy, it's not going to be shop, auto mechanics, culinary school, these other tasks. It's going to be coding. It's going to be being a lab tech. It's going to be doing all of this other kind of stuff. So it's not going to happen in a school with a teacher who has some sort of child development training. It's going to be in a work-based learning program run by IBM or some other nonsense, an out-of-school time learning partner. And so that was all set up so that people would say, yeah, to hell with your 4-year college. It's too expensive. You're too snooty. It's too woke. We're going to go and do our other thing. And then that is the lifelong learning path, because you're never going to be done, because it's always going to be the next credential. But that was all done by design. Oh, micro. Right. Yeah. Linda said the Dirty Jobs guy. And I think he even has a shit going on. And like, you can see, again, not to diminish the importance of these other pathways, but it was done for a purpose so that it would be an investment market.
Yeah, totally.
And the community colleges are really central in that. And I know Lynn has been, she was running for the board, community colleges. It's those associate's degrees and then the lifelong reskilling that I think is going to be embedded. And in the big states like California and Texas in particular, they have been major targets.
Yeah, and they mentioned some of the community college stuff here too.
An organization like ASA, let's say it's $1 billion endowment, gives away $50 million a year. That's a ton of money. But it's still got $1 billion that it's actually operating under. And how that capital gets allocated drives a huge amount of decisions. And what we do, what we want to be able to do is show that by creating alpha, by creating better returns for investors, more capital will flow into the space. So it's not just $125 million off to the side by Real One, but it's all $1 billion that ASA has under management. Anything about the Walton family, think about all these great families out there. The Ford Foundation recently allocated 10% of its endowment to impact, and it's outperforming the traditional investors. So we want more people driving more capital to impact investing with people who are going to make real change in society, like some of the funds up here.
Thank
So,
you, Daniel. I didn't pay him to say that, by the way.
You kind of do, actually.
Now, who are these people?
So this is Mark Grovick, which is general partner, New Markets Venture Partners. And
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I see now. All right.
Drew, it's up there. It's kind of cropped a little bit. I kind of cropped it. I put this. I just took this.
Oh, the Walton Foundation. Oh, and Achieve.
Yeah, the Achieve,
wow.
Walton Foundation, and Reach Capital was
Okay.
another one. But this was the panel where they all said they represent this, in crazy amount of money. But I thought that line at the end too, like, I didn't pay him to say that. He's like actually you do.
Yeah.
But it's in terms of like the direction of this. You have this very small hand number of people that are steering all this.
We realized what we thought was really important was to actually create direct pathways. So what our fund does is we buy companies in skill gap areas. Think about any area that you open the New York Times and they say, we need 100,000 more people who do X. We like buying those companies. So cybersecurity, healthcare, nurse staffing, for example, Salesforce administration. We buy companies that actually do that for a living, that have large need for employees, where the CEO says, my biggest problem is I can't find enough people who are certified in X. We buy that company and then we create the training program. We buy the company and then we add training programs to it. Think of it like creating European-style apprenticeship programs in the U.S. in an employer pay model, so employees pay nothing. And so this is sort of think of it as like a full stack approach to workforce, which is, we're actually going to guarantee someone a job when they get hired. We're going to train them for that job, and then we're going to hopefully see them for the next 2 years.
I thought that was interesting. He's talking about buying companies in order to get them into the learning program, like in order to help. So I always think about our concepts of business. If you go to like business school or you study this, there's a whole thing of like, oh, you got to build the widgets. Now you got to market the widgets and sell the widgets. And the business world actually works where sometimes like you'll have this thing over here that's like losing money. And why would they invest in this thing over here that's losing money? Because they have this other side business. They got this other side hustle going on where they're making all this money. So you have this business where it's all just kind of a front. The whole point of the business was just to get you into your learning thing, which is where they're making the real money of doing the training programs.
And then that's going to be the AI, right? The pay for success and then the machine learning for the AI.
Yeah.
But again, if you get trained for just to do a job for one company, like you're kind of trapped, right? You're not.
They talk about that. That's not the idea is not to get trained for one job. The idea is just to be in a perpetual. You're in the hamster wheel where you're constantly skilling and upskilling and reskilling. I mean, it sounds like it's not. This isn't about getting trained for one job. It's about getting on the path of just constant reskilling. It's like there's all these brand new markets that are being created around collecting and trading skills themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I just don't have any respect for any of this. It looks soulless. Like, why would people want to get up and do this every day of their life? I mean, other than it being a game, like their game is to buy a company and win a thing and move a number and whatever. Right. But it's not making the world any better.
Yeah, and the utter fraud that this is about, helping people or getting them to a better situation it's a joke.
The true alternative pathway for the people that are not in the traditional education system, really what's working, what's the ROI, thinking like Tony Carnevale, like what is the time and money that you could put in and what do you get out in terms of return and investing in proven solutions with high ROI for the student, with the data that drives that this is a high-quality product. And ultimately, you've heard from everyone on the panel, and I just want to emphasize how important it is that the employer is involved in these solutions. And I think that's a big issue that this country is missing. And we're doing a lot of work, and we're a small group of people managing, a couple $1 billion, but all of us together getting the employers to lean in to solve their own skills gap problem, like a lot of other countries, is something we're spending a lot of time on too.
Yes, we do want to move away from the college degree.
So, getting a good return on investment, and they're talking. We talked about the whole people nair thing, and talking about like this skills. But yeah, a return on investment is a big part of it, and
and they need the digital identity. So I mean, that's the learning on the ledger part, where he's saying the ROI and the investment or whatever is that once you're tagged, like they'll track you across like all the different jobs, like taking credit for what impact that particular skill acquisition did for your economic viability, right?
Yeah.
And they need to have the digital identity in order to track you across all the spaces. And wasn't there a clip in one of the ones you showed recently where they talk about like capturing the student? Like, then you capture them, and then you follow them everywhere, right? You're their learning teacher, their learning coach for their whole life once you've captured them. Yeah. And that's because it's the digital wallet. And, I just want to reemphasize, I'm sure, the people who are hanging out tonight in this chat, like, understand, but like, that's why I was so emphatic always about blockchain not being right. That it wasn't just about crypto, it was about the digital identity and the digital wallet, because none of those people up there are right. Like the world that's being built by those people is not right. Mm-hmm. And it's foundationally integrated into the idea of a digital twin and a digital wallet on Web3 distributed ledger technology.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, we do want to move away from the college degree or the need for bachelor's degrees. I don't quite think employers are there. So just embracing that reality, I think, is important, which is why part of the programs that we're looking at do still have a affiliation with an elite university. And so I think there is going to be a world where it's more hybrid. So there's going to be universities now changing kind of their models, maybe doing more flexible programs, partnering with some of our companies, like I mentioned Forthright before, partnering with our companies to, again, provide alternative credentials that may not be your traditional 2-year or 4-year degree. And I think that's going to lend some credibility until we get to the point that employers are really ready to embrace kind of these non-traditional credentials.
So it's interesting to hear, the employers are still not quite on board just yet.
Yeah.
And there's some discussion in some later clips where they talk about that problem where we still are having a hard time with getting the employers to buy into some of this stuff. So I guess it's kind of promising to possibly, I don't know.
Well, I mean, I just wonder, like, how many people even know what these markets are about, right? They're like, these people will come in and say, you have a skill problem. You have a skill gap problem. And they're like, well, maybe I need some more staff, but I wouldn't call it a skill gap problem, right? Like they're giving them the frame and the story to inhabit. And then they keep after them and after, no, you have a skill gap problem. And they're like, no, I just need some more people to do X, Y, Z. No, it's a skill gap problem. And then they sell them, and then they make them live in that story.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Oh, I have some clips coming up that address that specifically. It's pretty interesting.
Particularly getting the employers to, I keep pointing to the one person in the room, which is killing me.
Thank you for showing up, large employer.
I mean,
he may have actually left.
And the large employer left, so.
No, there's still one. But the fact that there's no employers
and they know each other. That's
blows
the
my
thing,
mind.
Jason.
It makes me
it's such a
sad.
small world.
Oh yeah.
I just want to say, like, they all know each other. They go to the same conferences, and I think you've said this before. There might be like 10,000 people in the world that know what's going on, and they all kind of pretty much start to know each other. They're like a couple degrees from each other.
Yeah.
If they don't know the people, they know their cohort, and they're within a couple degrees of all the other small number of people that actually know what's going on.
Yeah, but they were saying that they haven't pulled the employers for the most part into this world yet. And I guess that's a problem that they're working on of trying to expand their network to bring they're trying now to bring the employers in, and they're having a hard time with it.
That's good.
Soon we'll be working with about 50 community colleges around the country to build micro pathways
So Lynn will appreciate this one. Micro pathways.
Micro pathways.
You have to have little shoes to walk on the little micro pathways.
The thing is, like, and again, I'm not saying it was perfect, like college, or that, that it wasn't, like, the meritocracy thing isn't great. But I mean, there is something about are we, if we're giving all of that up, like, think about how much of American society is kind of built around, and for better or worse, I'm not saying it's necessarily optimal, but like, think how much of the real estate residential real estate is built on getting your kids in a good school district, right? Having them graduate, having them go to a good college, having them get the good job. What they're talking about, unbundling all of this. And again, I'm not saying that works, and there is like, the cult of meritocracy isn't great. And there's a lot of people that it never worked for, and it put a ton of people in debt, and it may put a ton of people in mortgage debt. But to untangle that is going to actually unravel most of how society has worked since the World War II era, pretty much.
Yeah.
And then nobody's really talking about that. Like, do the realtors know, like, what's going to happen? Like, when all of a sudden we don't go to college anymore, we don't really go to school, we just go online. I mean,
yeah. How is that going to affect all these other,
like, how's it going to ripple through everything?
Yeah. Good point.
Like, we're not going to aspire to go to a good college anymore. Like, we're just going to aspire to get some, whatever, nano pathways.
Micro pathways.
It'll be a PICO pathway pretty soon.
Yeah. Well, and my thing is, I separate the two things, because I have, like, major criticisms of the education system and the way things have been set up until this point. To me, I think one thing doesn't have to do with the other one. You don't have to. It doesn't have to be like.
No, but they are. They are currently integrated.
Yeah, they are integrated. But I'm just saying, like, my criticism of this doesn't mean, like, I want to go back to the old ways either, I guess, is my point. My point is, I think we should forge a new path that we're always trapped with these binaries. Like, do you want this or that? I'm like, well, no, actually, neither of those are too great on my book.
The idea there is building the muscle memory with those community colleges and networks of local employers to build short duration, aligned credentialing solutions that can change, though, as the market changes. Because it's not one credential anymore for the rest of your life. It's lifelong learning and stackability. We're going to need other things like efficiency and cost and time to kind of come down for learners. But those are things that we're looking at investing in.
So, good one, Len. Yeah, so the stackable credentials that are constantly changing.
I've been talking about stackable credentials.
Yeah, no, you have. You have. It's well, and eventually.
Clueless. I'm like, yeah.
Eventually, everybody's going to know all this stuff. All this stuff's going to be common knowledge at some point. It'll just be normalized.
I went to Tulsa and I talked to 15 people in the Tulsa, Oklahoma library to tell them about stackable badges in January of 2020, and everybody's still running around. Julianne's still running around talking about Agenda 21 stuff, right? She forgot all of this. All of that's gone, out the window. All of that. It's just we're not even talking about that anymore. But yep, here it is, the stackable credential.
Yeah.
Skill building on its own isn't going to work. So in the future, I see skill building being coupled with wraparound supports, mental health, navigation, identity formation, connectivity, earn and learn models, et cetera.
So I don't know if you caught all of that, but he says, wraparound support, mental health navigation, and did you catch identity formation?
No, I didn't get that. Can we roll it back?
Yeah, let me go back. He says, I'll just do this whole segment again.
Skill building on its own isn't going to work. So in the future, I see skill building being coupled with wraparound supports, mental health, navigation, identity formation, connectivity, earn and learn models, et cetera.
That is going to be, can I just say, that is the play to earn. He said learn and earn. Yeah. But this is the whole thing that I had that whole big thing with Derek Bros about the crypto gaming and the kids. Now, that particular game, that Splinterlands game, I think was more of a card game than a role-playing game. But they're going to come with crypto play to earn, learn to earn. It's going to be crypto play to learn to earn with your archetype. And then they're going to try to manage your mental health status in the in-game economy. And it's going to be really, really messed up.
When the identity formation too, like what does that mean? What does that look like? What is
They're going to
identity?
turn you into a character.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what's already happening in the social emotional learning and stuff, but only the culture war people are too crazy framing it out as like woke brainwashing that they don't understand what it actually is. Mm-hmm. I mean, and so he's talking a little bit more about adults. And I would say in that this goes with Ronald Cohen and the social impact finance, that they were doing career impact bonds in New Jersey linked to the lockdowns, right? People who were put out of work for the lockdowns. And you could reskill into like 3 different areas, like pharmaceuticals, energy, or coding. But you could self-finance with those income sharing agreements that I mention often. But it wasn't just your tuition; it was also your childcare or your other wraparound services. So they're not going to give you the wraparound services; they're going to wrap it into what you have to pay back.
Yeah,
and that's what these career impact bonds are about. And I will say the mental health that goes too into the Santa Clara County, those social impact bonds. There were 4: early childhood, like pre-K, early childhood literacy, homelessness, and mental health. And the mental health was Partners in Wellness, and the deal verifier for that with University of California, San Francisco was Palantir. So when he's talking about your mental health wraparound services, that's going to be a career impact bond verified by somebody like Palantir. And wow. I don't know, who knows? Is there going to be psychedelics in that, right? Like we know he's all about the psychedelic stuff.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, there's a lot in that little clip.
Okay, 1 second. So this next one, I actually am jumping from the ASU GSE thing real quick over to, this is something that just happened, and I normally don't use clips from the World Economic Forum because I find most of them really are useful, and it's just sloganeering, and you don't really get any of the meat and potatoes about what's happening. But this particular one, it was called the Growth Summit. It just happened. It was the Learning Relay Education to Employment to Lifelong Learning. There actually was some stuff in here that I thought was useful. So I'm going to jump over here for this one thing.
I just want to point out the relay, this idea of relay, because I think we need to understand that as circuits and electricity. So I think a relay is sort of, I don't know, Quantum Heart Cafe, you're more familiar with the electrical stuff, but isn't a relay like an electrical element too? It's not just like running a relay race. I think a relay is also like a circuit component.
Yeah. Okay.
We are.
So real quick, let me just go through who's in this. Let me find a screenshot of where. Okay, there's one. Okay, so let me just go through who all is in this panel. We have J.D. LaRock, and no, he's not a character from a 1970s police
program.
Harvard there. It sounds like a fictional name. I'm J.D. LaRock.
Entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Being I think from now on, we just, instead of entrepreneur, we call them ant agents, ant computer agents.
Entrepreneurs.
Entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs.
Yeah, so the Network for Teaching it's NFTE, and he went to Harvard. So there's J.D. LaRock, and we have Yusuf Abdullah Al-Banyan, and he's actually currently the Minister of Education in Saudi Arabia, but in 2022, Forbes had him listed as one of the top 100 CEOs in the Middle East, and he was the CFO of a company, SABIC, which is one of the world's largest petrochemical manufacturers. So he goes from that to being the Minister of Education. Figure that one out. We're all
supposed to be bioreactors.
Figure that one out.
Yeah, human capital is the new oil. Yeah. Well, I mean, and it kind of goes with all the stuff, with the flow, flow being with the smart cities, AI running people with AI.
So then we also have Deepu Moni, and she is the Minister of Education in Bangladesh. And
so Bangladesh, can I say, Bangladesh is a test bed for Michael Bloomberg, and Bloomberg Philanthropy is doing a lot with digital identity and blockchain early on in Bangladesh.
Yeah, they talked
the
about
other
how
thing is-
Bangladesh is just way ahead of the curve on all this
yeah,
stuff.
'cause that's because of Michael Bloomberg did that. And again, it's so economically disadvantaged that for these impact deals, like you quote unquote improve somebody's life a tiny little bit, like by Western standards, and you can like bank all of that impact. So you go to the places that are the most, with the lowest economic standards to bring them up.
Yeah. And then lastly, we have, let's see, actually, I think I had him up here. His name is Dr. Kevin Frey, and he's with this nonprofit called Generation Unlimited. I don't know if you've come across that at all, but they do skilling, skilling one of
They
the,
want the girls and the women of the global south to build the extended reality. Like that's pretty much what that's about.
yeah.
And it's interesting. See, like, Price Waterhouse, Unilever. Unilever's really deep with Tavistock too. Dubai. Oh my gosh, what a mess. Well,
Yeah,
can I just
IKEA.
look at the logo up there at the top, the circle?
Yeah.
I guess it's supposed to look like a bead or something like that. But it's kind of the UN SDG rainbow colors. But look at it: our time, our turn, our future. And so time, that's the oscillation. And turn, I think turn also relates to the circuit again, like that circle, the Ouroboros or whatever, and the turning and the cybernetics. I think that all of these logos are really important.
Right. Yeah. So that's that organization. They also have a connection to the UNICEF as well. So.
Oh yeah, UNICEF. What a bunch of BS.
All right. So that's, and then this woman,
It's very global, right? And that's what we're talking. Everyone's like, well, are they on it? Are they on it? Or like, yes, no, they're all in on it. Like all the nations are part of the global brain.
And I forgot I had the name of her written down, and I think I accidentally like deleted it or something. But the woman on the end is from IKEA. Let's see. Do I have it written down somewhere here? Anyway,
right. Lynn was pointing out that the new head of Big Thought, which is the out of school time learning in Dallas, came from the Abu Dhabi ports in the United Arab Emirates. And I think he was like a chemical engineer too, wasn't he? It was something weird. Like there was no way that you would look at this guy's bio and say, oh, he should be doing out of school time programming with kids.
Yeah.
He was like sort of like technology engineer, maybe bio or chemical engineering for oil companies. And then, he shows up in Dallas to do after school programs.
Yeah. Some of these people's, you look at their history and there's no congruency or logic to it. It's kind of wild.
Well, until you understand the bigger, like we are the new oil. So.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So that's this one.
We are in the midst of transforming our education system. Now we have learners. We don't call them students anymore. They're learners, and they will constantly be learning. And there comes this lifelong learning, because now it's not just primary, secondary, or tertiary. Things are changing so fast. Whatever we learn in our universities now may not be relevant 5 years down the line.
So again, this is just a repeat of what we've been saying, but lifelong learning, things are constantly changing, and also I've talked about like the language that they use. You're not students anymore; you're learners.
Right. Well, you're a resource for the AI. I mean, that's the thing that I think Lynn, she said it earlier on, but it's learning us. Mm-hmm. So I think they want us to imagine that we're actually doing the learning, but what is being done is to create an environment in the outside in robot in which we perform for the machine and it learns what it is to be human.
Right.
I think what AI has done is
So this is the Kevin Frey with a generation. This is Kevin from Generation Unlimited.
Okay.
And he kind of reminds me of like, remember Joe Isuzu, the commercials with Joe Isuzu? There's something like, he's got this kind of smile that just like, you think, oh, I shouldn't trust this guy.
He's got a book on his lap.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would love to know what he's got there, but I couldn't see what it was.
I think what AI has done is massively accelerate a transition that was already happening within education on the skills we're developing. I think if a lot of us think about when we were in school, we learned how to generate knowledge. We learned how to do research, to synthesize that knowledge and produce it in a report, in a PowerPoint presentation. Maybe later we learned how to code. Well, now there's AI. So the marginal value of creating knowledge, of generating knowledge, is going to zero very, very quickly. And
so that, you know, this idea of the knowledge that you need is going to zero. Like you just, they talk about, you know, being a prompt engineer or something, but you know,
Well,
just
see, the thing is though, like, I think they want us to believe that we're useless and that limited. And I mean, I think you're right. I mean, I don't think the AI is all of that. I think they want us to believe the hype about it.
Yeah. It's the AI is programmed and I think the AI is going to be steering us, and it's not self-driven. Like the AI is kind of like we talk about, like decentralized. There is a layer to it that is driving us in a certain direction. That I think.
And I would say, I mean, the other thing is, so the last 3 days, like I've been going through all of the 990s and the financial filings of Children's Health Defense, like to see what it says, like in excruciating detail, like every single money item, and putting them in order from 2007 to 2021, looking at every single board member, looking through every single employee to figure out what it tells me about that as an organization, right? And I sort of have a framework of what I think about it initially, but each new piece fills out a picture. But that is based on my deep body of experience and context, so that I can know when the pieces come in, what is significant or insignificant about that particular addition to the larger picture. I don't think that AI can do that. Like AI can synthesize a whole bunch of stuff, but it doesn't, I don't think that it can actually intuit, like have these to create like authentic understandings around these vast data sets. Like I think they can maybe do it on a very superficial level, but I don't think that no AI could do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying like it's a different way of thinking.
Right. It's just gotten better at being able to appear like it is.
It's like a magic trick. Yeah.
Right. So I'm just going to repeat this last line though, because that's okay.
Creating knowledge, of generating knowledge, is going to zero very, very quickly.
I just thought that the way he said that, creating knowledge, generating knowledge, is going to zero very, very quickly. And what he's saying is that it's the GPT that's going to create and generate knowledge. That's no longer our role in society. Which of course we know that ChatGPT isn't actually creating the knowledge.
Yeah, it's a liar.
It's a liar. That's a good point. Good way to put it. Joey Suzu.
And what that means is that is not skills that the workplace are going to value anymore. So we now have to very quickly fast forward to say, what are the uniquely human skills that are left now post-AI?
Yeah, so what are the uniquely human skills that are left post-AI? Thoughts? Or
it seems to be emotional outrage on the internet.
Yeah, there you go.
We are unique talent. It's like performing emotional outrage on the internet.
I generated this much anger.
I don't buy it. We don't have to live in that story. Like, no. We don't have to live in yours. He's the entrepreneur. No, he's the global. Because he wants all of those people of Africa to build extended reality. So come on. I'm not buying that.
Yeah, I'm not either. I always say either, but I guess it's either, right? I don't know where I caught that from. Anyway, go ahead.
We know from research that high-dose tutoring, one-on-one high-dose tutoring, is one of the best ways to improve educational outcomes.
That's AI.
Now, and I demoed one that works on a 2G phone using ChatGPT. Yeah. Every young person will have a personal tutor that can accompany them through their entire life, who gets to know them. The demo I saw, he told me to pretend that I liked soccer. So I said, I typed in, I don't understand inflation, and I like Manchester United. And it gave me a personalized story about inflation using soccer players from Manchester United. So imagine this personalized tutor that travels through your life with you and learns about you and how you learn. Absolute game changer going forward, delivered by a
the
2G to
US
every young person on the planet.
Agency.
I think that's tectonic.
For your next gig job.
Say that again, Allison.
I was just saying, like, developed for you by the U.S. intelligence services
right.
to prepare you for your next gig job as
Yeah,
you live in your bad tiny house.
We don't talk about them, Allison. You know that. Keep silence on that one. Yeah,
well, I mean,
just but the way he describes, he's like,
talk about the genie on Reasoning Mind. Like, no, I don't want something like that.
Yeah.
Although, I have to say, anybody who's like in the chat who knows about like the Ender's Verse books, like the later Ender's Verse books, like he ends up with like an AI thing in his ear, Jane. And so like, it's interesting. Jane is like the AI who they almost, it's eventually like he marries and like the wife is jealous of the AI that lives like in a crystal in his ear. And this is an old book. It's from the 90s or whatever. And so, yeah, they had envisioned this for a long time, this companion. But
yeah. Well, and the latest Blade, I don't know if you saw the latest Blade Runner. I mean, it's in a lot of different, sci-fi movies that they're really putting this idea out of, you have your AI that's your assistant, co-pilot, partner, whatever. Yeah.
The second thing would be a career coach. Similar to that young tutor, every young person can have a career coach, a chat GPT and a generative AI career coach telling them which skills they need and which jobs to be connected to. So I think we're in a new world.
Yeah, well, that is definitely a new world. So,
yeah.
But that clip, I mean, he really just said it right there. He he lays it out. This is what they're working towards, and he's so giddy about it.
All of that runs on a digital identity. I just want to emphasize that this idea that you have a personal tutor or a personal coach that goes with you on every twist and turn of your life means if they're not actually with you as a person, they're with you, your digital footprint. Right. Yeah. Like there's not a direct interface to you per se. They're interfacing to you through your digital identity. And that's why, anyway, just the lockdowns and the digital ID and everything, like the fact that the health freedom people couldn't get beyond that this wasn't just, one, a health passport, or two, that it wasn't just, CBDC, that there's something much bigger to it. And
yeah. When everyone talks about surveillance, but they never talk about for what. Like,
yeah.
Why? What is this surveillance going to be used for? Because that's why most people are like, well, I'm not doing anything wrong. I don't give a shit. But they don't actually understand how you can be steered, and like the whole world can be steered and shaped, and they can predict and the outcomes that they created in the first place. It's pretty wild. So this is the woman from IKEA, and I can't remember her name. I should have wrote it down, but
we're going from a knowledge-based society to a skill-based society. And what do I mean by that? I mean, you can have a knowledge, doesn't mean that you have skills to actually realize it in your everyday working life.
So yeah, we're going from a knowledge to a skills-based society.
But why would you not want to have knowledge? That's dumb. Like, why would you want to do that? Like, that doesn't sound fun at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm all about the knowledge.
I agree. Someone, one of the
Knight Rider. That's a good one.
Well, the name of the person, Bina Goldman. That's funny.
Yeah, I think Bina was on one of the programs. Was maybe in the homeschool program. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that the real Bina out there?
I think the only way for us to achieve it is through a public partnership, private partnerships really set up, where ministries, they have to come up with policy and regulatory environments. There are employers, there are also education institutions, and there are elements that has to be and a clear, important components. But also in the same times, individuals themselves, they have to take a lead to own their career. And I think this is very, very important. And again, this has to come with the education system.
I don't think you have a career, you have a learning journey. Like, I mean, this idea, like, I think they're getting rid of the careers. They're just doing learning journeys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're emphasizing on industry academia collaboration because we ask the industry, what do you want to see? What knowledge, what skills, what set of, what attitude do you want to see in your workers, in your employees? And if we can involve them in developing our curriculum, and then also involve them for internships, apprenticeships, then there could be a better match.
So
this
yeah,
is the craziness with like stimuli and the school in a video game with IBM and P-Tech and everything. Yeah, let the employers dictate the terms of the workers, and then essentially, like, you never have to have any competition, right? I mean, and you like, everyone will just have to work for the existing businesses because they're going to dictate the terms. You're not allowed to develop a new idea or new business or anything. You just have to stay in your lane, and the businesses get to groom their own talent and cream off the top and throw away the rest.
When she also said attitudes too, like so it's there's a behavioral aspect to all this as well. It's not just about do you have the skill to do this thing, to do this task. There are these layers that have to do with your psychology and your personality and your attitude. You know what kind of attitude do you want in your employees? Which is kind of interesting.
It's so interesting that both of you are not saying, in this context that we're grappling with today, let's throw away our existing institutions and start fresh. Instead, you're saying the opposite, that we need to lean into existing institutions, even those that may have contributed to the mismatch, to create a better match. And it's your call for a greater communion between employers and the universities, for example, is a very important call.
So greater communion.
I think if we can...
Oh, let's stop that. So yeah, a greater communion between the employer and the university. So that was interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know Juliana did actually talk about that some, about like universities being these anchors in these smart cities. So, I mean, the universities have been sort of sellout since the 80s, since the Bayh-Dole Act. So the universities are essentially just extended commercial government entities to begin with. So.
I think if we can push the analogy a little further, the relay race analogy, where the baton gets dropped all the time is where actually Generation Unlimited focuses, which is on the learning, turning, school to work transition. That's where there's a really big mismatch. And I think there's things that ministries of education can do. I think there's things corporates can do. I think there's things young people can do to improve that space. If we, again, play with the analogy, of course, a good relay race has you running side by side as you hand the baton off. And I think the private sector has to run side by side with the public sector as we talk about the skills mismatch.
So. The skills mismatch, yeah. But the thing is, like, they act like there is going to be some stability when they know there isn't. Like, I mean, what is the baton? Like, what are you passing the baton every 3 days? I mean, come on. Like, do you have an employer? No, you don't have any. I mean, I think that's one of the things I noticed when I was doing, I've been doing this research since the lockdowns, is like all these people in the Web3 space, and you look at their LinkedIns, I mean, there are people who have 3 different jobs in 1 year, and soon it's going to get even tighter and tighter. So yeah, I mean, essentially the relay is just you and AI assigning you to your next gig.
Yeah. When it's ever changing too, it's just like it's the race. You're going to be the baton's going to be how often is that baton going to be passed off? Like quite often, it sounds like.
The organization.
What's that?
Just exhausting. The whole thing is just exhausting.
Yeah, well, I've been listening to I've listened to hours and hours of stuff to find these things. It's kind of painful.
The organization I lead, we actually start our work on entrepreneurship education as young as middle school. Why? Because we are trying to educate students to develop the habits of mind, creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, future orientation, ability to manage risk, that they need to recognize early on so that they can develop the idea that they can be creative.
So habits of mind. Towards creative and entrepreneurship.
And entrepreneurship is everything, and that's all of the game theory. right?
Yeah, so everything's going to be business. Like everything's going to be tokenized, and everything's going to be put into market exchange.
Right.
You know, and so that's the whole thing. If you're thinking of like your friendship as a tokenized thing, you know, the entrepreneurship.
Well, I mean, the social media has really kind of taught that, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Lifelong learning is about the whole chain of learning from birth through retirement, maybe after retirement. And so it's important not only to think of
you cannot retire.
Not you the whole time.
Work-based learning, tertiary education, professional education, but also how we develop those habits of mind in younger learners so that they can really develop a love of learning that allows them to become lifelong learners.
And not go crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's no wonder they're planning for mental health support, because like they're clearly creating a world that's inhuman.
Yeah. So the next one is we're back.
How many of these do we have?
So I have I got a couple more, a few more. There's one that I actually probably should have cut down a little bit more. I should have trimmed it down a little bit more, but well, you know, if you need to check.
I could do it for a little bit more. So you got like a couple more, like a handful more?
Yeah. I mean, if you need to step out, I can always finish them up. So it's not a big deal. Just stay as long as you feel like you have the energy for. So this next one is this guy, Josh Burson, and he's got this thing called the Burson Company. Here's his LinkedIn. Josh Burson, global industry analyst. He's with HR. He does HR stuff, and his company's called went to Cornell.
Does he have like 800,000 followers or like 900,000 followers? That's a lot.
It looks like it. Yeah, that's a lot.
He's
for.
Pretty.
This is his website.
Systemic rewards. Okay.
Yeah, so it's a lot about HR, human resource. Dude, like the languaging, the human resources, human capital. Like I just find it so like troubling. Looking at.
Is that supposed to be chalk, like broken pieces?
Yeah, they're all pieces. They actually had like one where it was like 3D and it was kind of moving around, like the chalk is moving around you.
By chalk.
Digital transformation wasn't about technology. It was about how the company operates. It was about operating in a digital way and managing this constant flow of information we were getting from customers, and then developing software and tools and experiences faster and faster and faster. And then we had the pandemic, and everybody who said, we have a 3-year digital transformation, said, no, we have a 1-month digital transformation. We're going digital this month. You guys are all going home. We're not going to shut down the company.
Yeah.
And you remember what happened?
Who would have guessed?
What happened? For the first month or two of the pandemic, everybody kind of shut down, and then the economy picked up really fast, and we had these digital delivery systems and remote purchasing systems and all of that technology. And companies realized that they could transform a lot faster than they thought.
So, I thought that when he stated that the digital transformation was not about the technology, but about a different way of like doing business. I think that's a really key point there, that this isn't just about being more efficient. This is about a completely different way of approaching business and approaching life itself.
Yeah.
So
what's going on now is virtually every industry is colliding with another industry. So Walmart, CVS, most of the retailers are getting into healthcare, drugs, not just giving people shots, but buying and delivering healthcare services. Healthcare companies are being impacted by technology companies who are hiring and getting into digital health. Banks are getting disrupted. You saw Apple's deal with Goldman that was announced yesterday. Banks, consumer banks are getting disrupted by tech companies, and even Walmart is getting into banking.
So like the lines between these different industries are kind of like being washed away.
Right. We're all just going to be in the protocol, Jason.
Well, back in the day, you think like there were always jokes like in the future there'll be one corporation or whatever, and then they'll all be Unicom.
Yeah. Something else has happened, and that is workers have become more mobile. Last year, as I said, about a third of the U.S. workforce changed jobs. 45% of them changed industries. That was also unprecedented. We've also had the growth of LinkedIn, Monster.com, and the openness of the job market. Now, of course, you can sit on LinkedIn and you can apply to 20 jobs in about 5 minutes. And on the other side, you can look at candidates in a continuous basis. So we have this very, very fluid market. And what companies have realized is that in the middle of all of this mobility and all of this data that we can capture about candidates and employees, maybe we don't need to look at their pedigree, maybe we don't need to look at their job history quite so much. Maybe we should hire them based on their skills, because if they have the right skills, we can teach them about our company, we can teach them a little bit about our industry, and so we're moving into this world where every individual, every employee, and this is going to happen at the front line and the blue-collar work as well, is going to be evaluated and to some degree paid by their skills.
So yeah, thoughts, Allison?
I keep thinking about, like, back in the day, it was sort of like if you had someone who could work hard and think intelligently, you could train them to do the industry, right? Like it's kind of opposite. They're saying we don't need knowledge anymore, we just need skills.
Yeah.
And so this idea that if you have a person with a well-rounded education or life experience who is a hard worker, and then like people who are a good judge of like character and quality, like I feel like that's out the window, and I don't know, I was just having a couple of exchanges with somebody recently, and they were like the idea of having pride in your work and caring, like being invested, is also going out the window with all this gig work. Like my mother, my father's having, is in this Alzheimer's care facility, has all this complexity issues with their insurance. There's literally no way that she can talk to anyone in the insurance companies. Like they just move from, and it's always been bad, but imagine that, like when it's not even a job that you care anything about, like you have no integrity, you're just passing it on to the next person. And there was another exchange with someone, and they're like, yeah, there are so few people who have any integrity in their work anymore. They're just sloughing it off at the most superficial level just to push things, down the line. And I think that's what this is creating, this idea of skills. You're not invested in the company. You don't have any, we do remote work. You don't know your coworkers. You don't know what's going on with their kid or what they bring to lunch or what their hobbies are or anything. You just go and do some kind of crappy task for a while, and then until you get sick of it, and then you jump to some other crappy task. And it just, it feels like a tsunami, and I just can't believe that most of the people in the world are gonna roll over for this.
Yeah, totally.
And
also just the idea of like scrolling through, because there's going to be like this massive influx of people in job markets for any given job out there. The number of people that are going to be applying for that job, because it is global and they're bringing the whole world into that job market, and they can just, scroll through and find their, have the algorithm, filter the people out, but, based on their skills. So that's, you're going to have to, the whole idea of credentialing, right? You can have knowledge and you can know how to do a job really, really well. But historically, if you didn't maybe have the piece of paper that said that you had the knowledge, the credentials to do it, you're just excluded right out of the gate. And so now, if you don't want to go through this process and you don't want to be part of this machinery, you're going to be excluded from any type of work. So that's, not good.
Technology, AI, new HR technology is very, very focused on this idea of skills. The training industry behind this is a massive industry. I was just talking to Rob Lauber outside, who's the ex-CLO of McDonald's. It's a very large industry. It's, my estimates, it's over $300 billion around the world. I actually think it might shrink. I think if you look at the impact of ChatGPT and generational AI and some of the tools that are coming, we might not need so much of this stuff. I'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. but it's very robust.
So,
well, can I just point out the other thing about skills is that like the World Skills Organization, Pavel Luksha, who I talk about often, who was the Russian transhumanist from Skolkovo, like he was connected to the world skills building stuff back in the 2015, 2016. And so this idea of stackable credential and skills is directly interfacing with transhumanism. And, again, all the people want to run around and talk about, these other gender fluid issues and being so scared of all of that and so terrified of that. And I'm like, the real transhumanism is the skill building. On the one part, people, drag queens in libraries is not your problem. Your bigger problem is this thing that we're talking about, is the human resources and stackable credentials and AI sorting that builds your digital twin. That it's less and less about your physical body and more about your digital representation and the digital representation of your mind and mental capacity and as a skill set. And again, very hard to yell above the noise. I can't imagine every time we seem to have one of these chats, someone hops on totally off topic and goes, hey, you want to talk about this topic? Which I'm like, no, this is the thing we have to talk about. Yeah, I know talking about human resources is not super exciting and is not jazzy and doesn't get the frenzy of the crowd the way these other topics do. But this is the nuts and bolts of actually the vast majority of the adult population has to get up and do some kind of paid employment. And this is this is how it's being shaped.
Yeah. And he also mentions too that a lot of these, even the industry itself is going to be shrinking because it'll be replaced by AI too. That was another thing that was interesting that he just.
I just don't think AI is that good. What do you want to have your doctor be an AI?
I don't think that's the point, that it's not that good. It's just that it can be centralized. You can do, it can be very efficient for what they want to do.
Doing a lot of bad things.
Yeah, doing a lot of bad things. Yeah, it's not. I don't see this improving our lives in any way. I think it's going to do the opposite.
It isn't just about skilling people. It's about figuring out if the skills that we are helping this person acquire, will it help them advance into the role, the job, the industry, the needs in the future of our company. And of course, we're going to add AI to that, and that's going to just turbocharge this whole process.
So,
yeah. I just feel like the whole speed of all of this stuff is breaking people.
Yeah, I think the stream might have dropped out. It's back. Somehow my stream dropped. Hopefully you guys didn't miss anything. Yeah, no, I agree. So yeah, I'll continue on. So I got sidetracked with the stream dropping out. So sorry about that, Allison.
That's okay.
Once we have AI, everything's going to change. We're going to develop content faster. People are going to be to look for information and get training directly from the chatbot. We're going to have new ways of training.
I don't want to be trained by a chatbot.
Yeah, exactly.
No, thank you.
Yeah, no chatbot for me. Thank you very much. But I heard that over and over and over again. They're really pushing the chatbot at the.
Nobody wants to even talk to one on your phone. When you're trying to get a real person. How many people say, "Oh, I love just talking to a chatbot on the thing"? No.
Yeah. Well, I guess the idea is if it gets better and better at pretending, faking it, that it might become, somehow more enjoyable, especially if it knows what buttons to push.
Yeah.
it'll give you a little compliment. It'll be like, "Oh, did you hear about such and such?" It could personalize your personalized chatbot that cares about you and is paying attention to you.
Chat and prompt interfaces, and we're going to have richer and richer VR and other forms of content as well.
So that was that guy.
Richer and richer VR content. I don't know if Liz and Lynn, if you're still there, but that's the OER, right?
Okay, so the next one was I actually showed a clip from this on the last one I did, but it was Rachel Romer. Yeah, I talked about her. She's the CEO of Guild, and so this was called Workforce Learning in the Age of AI.
Instructure.
Yeah.
I went to
Yes,
visit
Steve.
Instructure. You know, it's
Did
in
you?
Salt Lake. It's in Salt Lake region, right? Canvas and Instructure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, this is some more clips from this talk that relates to.
We think the 4 and 40, 4 years of college, 40 years of work, retirement, is dead. And I think the every 4 is probably the more likely, which is that, workers or employees or learners, they are all the same, right? Those are all titles for the same group, are going to need to evolve such that they're acquiring skills on the job constantly, but then probably doing formal reskilling or upskilling on an every 4 to 5 year cadence. And for those of us here, I'd imagine most folks here in the knowledge economy, but for folks who haven't yet emerged into the knowledge economy, the likelihood of every 5-year skilling is even greater.
So again, it's just this constant cycling through. They're going to, oh, nope, these are the new skills you need. Got to get those skills. Oh, sorry, those skills aren't needed anymore. These are the new skills you need. And there's a whole economy that's being built around this where, and I don't know what other markets will be built on the trading of like, oh, you know, looking at, there's another guy coming up where they're talking about your skills portfolio. Like as a company, like you have a skills, these are all the people I have, and these are the skills badges they have, and actually creating like a portfolio based on the skills that are held by your company. It's crazy.
Well, it's interesting. So I have a video that eventually I'm going to get around to showing with Lynn about the military technology and XAPI. And so it's the scenario, there's like, you know, these are military people, and there's a woman sitting on her sofa reading a military manual on her Kindle or whatever, her ebook, and then she gets a ping like, "Hey, do you want to join me in the virtual reality trainer?" And so they put on the VR headset, and then boom, there, you know, she is with another colleague and doing the whatever, and then they do that, and then they go on to something that might be an in-person cyber warfare kind of training. But the guy who's doing the facilitation of the training is like dialing up, like he has a dashboard of the two people, like the woman and the guy, and then they need a third team member to run the extra training exercise. And so he's like scrolling through, and you know, those radial dials with like characteristics, like behavioral characteristics, those sort of circular dials. And he's like finding the one that like that matches, you know, they're like stretching out and stretching until he picks the one that's like the third team member. And so I think that's really what they're going to, like, that's a military construct, but I think that's what they're imagining will be the new HR, only it'll be like, at least an AI assistant with the person doing it, who will say like, "Oh, here's your optimal team." When we started, you said, "Oh, you know, we're going to dial in a recipe for the right kind of combination of people." And it was quite a very dynamic visual. And so that when you see that and you match it to the social emotional learning, you match it to the behavioral token economies in the classroom, you match those things together, like then it's really, it's obvious. So,
yeah. Yeah, and then the filtering, you know, it's just like sorry, you've been filtered.
I've been erased. I think pretty much like I'll be erased.
Right.
We're not the only ones that recognize, right, this change in learner expectations, right? The universities, right, the traditional education institutions, as well as districts, you know, K-12 systems are recognizing that everybody's not going to go through this path of I'm going to graduate, I'm going to apply through admissions, and I'm going to go to a university, I'm going to go get a 4-year degree. There's so many different paths, and the way that the universities talk to us about it is there's so many different paths to bring somebody into the university, right? It's not always through admissions. They may go get a job right out of high school, and they may want to get a micro-credential. I need to stack those, and over time they can get a degree. We're working with ASU on their 100 million learner program through Thunderbird, right, where they're offering free courses, you know, to they're targeting primarily women in underdeveloped countries like in Africa continent in particular, to say here's get on the path, right, and get on this path of education.
Get on the path
and
of
wherever
the
it ends
CAA,
up, you may just stop with the personal finance and the things that we're giving you for free, or you may want to get a credential that eventually leads to a degree, or maybe you just want a credential that leads to a great job.
So yeah, I think that they want to move to where less students that are going to school at the university, like in physical space, working toward a degree, but they want to expand the student base online in virtual space.
Well, that's what Michael Crow was doing. And
Yeah.
it's interesting because early on, it seemed incongruous because they didn't have the right concept of it. But Arizona State University has this big sustainability program, right? This big emerging technology sustainability program, the Wrigley program or something like that. And it goes way back, like it's like the earliest sustainability program, which seems, I guess, odd because I don't know, often with sustainability, you imagine something kind of green, but like Arizona itself is like pretty not green, like what exactly does green look like? And I mean, it's beautiful, like the desert, but it's not the core of what you imagine like as green, but it was about cybernetics. Like I didn't understand at the time, like, oh, this isn't actually about like forests and water and stuff. It's about cybernetics. And Koch Industries was a major funder of Arizona State University. So you're sort of like, well, why would the Koch brothers be funding sustainability? Right?
Yeah. Doesn't make sense.
Always like, why is the Koch Industries funding? That doesn't and because I didn't understand the bigger, like the other part of the elephant, which was, oh yeah, no, the future of the university is simply going to be hop into a VR headset and play a game and earn a skill badge. It's not going to, and they would say, oh, the sustainability is that you don't actually go to college, you just stay at home in your kitchen.
Right. Yeah, I'm excited about it. I don't know about you, but it looks amazing.
We become that infrastructure to enable whatever pathway a student, a learner takes. And so we pick up, we start with a learner when they enter the primary education, right? We're with them through secondary, post-secondary, through vocational, through, we've signed a few deals with companies like PeopleCert in Europe that does a lot of certifications around, plumbing or HVAC or some of these professional certifications with.
So yeah, the university getting into even certifications around plumbing and things like that, it's pretty, that's a major expansion.
City and Guilds in the UK that does retraining and works with the universities. And so the entire ecosystem recognizes that there's a change in how we're going to learn over time as a lifelong learner. And it's created opportunity for us, but it really is an opportunity to reach so many more than just the 17 million higher ed students in the U.S. or the 55 million, K-12 students in the U.S. It's such a great opportunity to affect society on a worldwide basis.
Wow. And he's with Instructure. Is that the Instructure guy? Or
yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yep.
Wow. So I mean, Instructure's also, I believe it's connected to Canvas. And again, the situation for that is that we have to understand that also is Salt Lake City. Like that's the greater, and Salt Lake City was also like Western Governors University. And, remember at the Mormon Transhumanist Conference, there was the guy there pitching the badges and the competency-based education and higher education. So like this idea of Canvas being built, that's the curriculum management software in all the universities and even down, I think, into some parts of K-12. And so all of the materials are online, all of the grades are online, all of the readings are online, some of the lectures are online, and they're getting ready just to automate all of that.
Yeah.
And when I first started my blog, I named it after there was a documentary film about David Noble, and he was the one who was always chasing at the University of California system about online learning and intellectual property and sort of the theft and the moving towards this mechanization. And he was hot on their tail, like in the 90s. And, and I think he probably died prematurely because of that. But, it's just taken as for granted. And I think that's the thing that's so sad is that, this idea of Instructure and Canvas being woven into everything, we just think it's normal. Like we just can't even imagine that it's not normal. And, one of my friends who's a professor, when they, all the coursework, because most professors aren't choosing it. The administration chooses it, and then they have to figure out how to adopt. But this person had like revised an assignment. Like there was an assignment and they had changed the due date and given an extension to the students. But somehow it hadn't gotten plugged into the system, into the platform that the extension, but this person was the professor and they knew that there was an extension. It was not a problem. But when the students didn't turn their thing in on the first date, according to the platform, they all got really nasty warning notices that they hadn't completed the assignment. And then they're all, and like a lot of these, college kids that are really worried about their grades. And so they're all barraging the professor asking like, wait, I thought you changed the date, when we're getting these automated messages. And then it was almost impossible to like change it afterwards because essentially the protocol was driving the experience, not the professor. The professor was no longer the person in charge of their class. The protocol was in charge of the class.
Oh yeah. Well, that actually, I brought up a clip that just for fun, because there was a show called Little Britain. It's a comedy skit show, and so I grabbed a clip just to throw some humor into this, because this is kind of where we're headed here.
My wife's about to have a baby. Computer says no.
What?
Baby's not due yet. I got you down for next week.
So they had a whole bunch of these where they had like little things where
says no.
there's more than one skit where it's just like the person's just deferring to whatever the computer tells them, but that's like totally where we're headed. Like it's like this person, like why are you even here? Like why don't I just go on the computer and see what the computer says?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty crazy. Computer says no. The next one was a segment called
Skillapalooza? You think I'm bad with my titles. Jason, that's terrible.
Yeah, Skillapalooza. Did it sound like whimsical and fun? But the main...
Citi is there, the chief learning officer at Citi. And you remember whose client base included Citi. That was Mr. Peck, either over at the COO, former or current of Children's Health Defense. Like Citi was one of his clients.
Yeah, so this is Cameron Hedrick. He's the main speaker.
Harvard.
Harvard. And he's another one of those that kind of, I feel like he's like he's got a used salesman kind of feel to his presentation. Citi. Well, I tried to find some more stuff. Citi, but yeah, he's the chief learning officer at Citi, the CLO at Citi. So yeah, that's this one. And then he presents at the end. There's a panel with some other people, but he gives the main presentation.
Noom? What kind of name? Head of tech learning at Noom. Oh gosh. Okay. They literally call it Brave New World too. Did you see that? They literally call it Brave New World.
Yeah. The whole conference was called Brave New World, which is did you guys read that book? Did you guys read that book by chance? Or just it reminds me of Ronald Reagan when he used Born in the USA for his political campaign. If you actually listen to the lyrics of the song, it's actually taking a very harsh, it's very critical of pretty much the same policies that Reagan stood for. But he didn't, they just heard Born in the USA. Oh, that sounds good. Let's use that. Oh, Brave New World. That sounds great. Let's use that.
Skills portfolio management. Let's jump in. Obviously, we think that this is a key idea, something compelling that we need to think about for the future of L&D. Skills portfolio management. Let me just unpack that for just a second. Let's think about the word portfolio. Typically, like a real estate portfolio or a stock portfolio or a stamp collection. Normally has 4 characteristics at least. You can find it or acquire the asset. You can develop the asset in some way. You can value the asset in some way. And you can move it around. You can trade it. There's some fungibility.
They're talking about people.
So with that as a backdrop, the simple thesis is this would be a good thing to do for a skill, a knowledge, attributes, because it is the lifeblood of a knowledge-driven, and in fact, all institutions. So if that thesis doesn't resonate with you, I don't know how the rest of this is going to go, but that is the basis upon which this is built. And if you follow that logic, you would rightly be thinking...
Watch him saying this in a room with people that are all wearing like artificial flower lays around their necks and not paying attention.
Yeah. Well, so what they did,
Speak.
what they used the lays for was to organize people into groups, because at a certain point, I didn't include this in the clips I'm sharing with you, but they had
kind of funny. It's like a little ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, no, that's the whimsy palooza part. That's the palooza part. You know, we know how to have fun.
Fake flowers.
and by the way, there's an open bar. So
thinking as a CEO or a CLO or a head of HR or just a general manager, if I'm talking to my board or my senior stakeholders about the quality of my skill portfolio, what would that look like? What might we present? How might we present it? What strategic value and competitive advantage might that give us? We do.
So, yeah, competitive. I actually have a lot of clips from this guy, and I could have trimmed it down a little bit, but he did say a lot of things that I think are useful.
You have skills, right? The things we know, the things that we can do, knowledge, the things we know, attributes, abilities. You've heard this SKA thing. It's kind of tired, but it's helpful to frame this discussion. So the idea here is simply, if you have that and you can X-ray it, right? You can X-ray an individual.
They want to X-ray an individual.
It's radio eugenics. They're working on radio eugenics already with the skill zap, zap, zap.
And codify the presence of a skill, a knowledge, an attribute, and depict the quality of it. That complexity is material.
Quality.
There would be some value in that. And if you can do it for one person.
Yeah, go for it.
So I just want to say, a friend that I've known for a long time, that we've been working against this blockchain stuff in the education space of higher education, was at a conference on blockchain, I think maybe in the Microsoft campus in California a number of years ago. And they were presenting all this stuff on blockchain. And we're like, you don't put people on blockchain, right? I mean, I get you can maybe make a case for some other things, supply chain things or whatever, but not people. They're not like lettuce heads. You know, they're not like, oh, that lettuce head fell off the back of the truck and got a little dinged, so their quality is less, and it's on the permanent ledger. And to me, like when he's talking about like the quality is like, and that's, I think maybe that's one of the things that galled me the most about the Andrew Peck stuff, was not that he was just a corporate guy, or not just that his like framing was big pharma and big banking, which was also a problem, but that he was, not just that he was a consultant, but he identified as a consultant's consultant. And so these people are so disconnected from real life that they have their shtick and they get up and they talk in these abstract ways on stages in front of people in ridiculous necklaces. But they're not realizing that this thing actually goes back onto real people, like with their lives, with families, with communities, like the very fabric of our reality and how our world is put together. Their callousness, like superficial, glib, jargony terms that they're walking around on the stage, and the fact that they can sort of do this jargony stuff up there, and then it has these real impacts in how we can conduct our lives. I mean, to me, this is the human resources version of like the health totalitarianism, right?
Yeah.
Like this is this other kind of totalitarianism that is coming, like a total dehumanization. And just for them to all, and it's not just him, but like so many of these people, for them to get up and just cavalierly speak words, but the words they're speaking have no heart to them. They have no, they're just like they're not even a very good script. I mean, it's not charismatic. It's simply just like going through the motions. And yet the consequences of what they're doing are so
massive,
dark and intense, right? It's like, is this how it ends? Is this, is this how we move into the next phase? It's just so demoralizing.
Yeah. I mean, even the way this guy presents himself, he's got some interesting, like little self-effacing quips. Anyways, you'll see.
All right.
Hypothetically do it for two. And this idea of portfolio starts to come into view. And if you can do it for two people, you could hypothetically do it for many people. And then you can sort of boundary.
Oh, sorry. I forgot to switch it over. Sorry.
And then you can sort of boundary condition your demographic however you want. to say, maybe I want to look at my skill portfolio for a division, for a geography, for a level, and so on.
Can I
and so
say
forth.
something really quick about
Yeah,
that?
skill portfolio. Yeah.
So, well, and bounded, right? So
Mm.
look at the picture on the screen there that they've got. It's like these circles. They're like cells, right?
Yeah.
They're like divided by cells. And, you know, people who've been paying attention to like the way I was talking about what happened on those substacks in the Ant computer, like when you're creating boundaries of your human capital, quality human capital, I think that's like, if you're imagining that the skill construction is linked to biohybrid computation or like task completion, I feel like they're going to create these geolocation or force fields that will gather people into units as like processing power, as like certain types of processing power for these different kinds of tasks. And I feel like, even though it's just very vague, but the imagery on that sideboard with the circles and the little, you know, they're probably hexagons or something in there lit up, that's what that is.
Yeah, it was hard to see. I was kind of bummed that like they did such a shitty quality on the thing. So they look like, I kind of zoomed in on it on my other screen here, and I can, yeah, it's like little people, but within the people are tiny little, yeah, like different colored it's like a hexagonal map, and then there's different colored hexagons. So that's exactly what
and
it
that's
is.
sort of like also a hat tip to photonics. I think some of this stuff, like light up people, like show me your skills, light, you know, blink, blink, you know?
Yeah.
And even like the humming, like you it's almost a synesthesia. And that's something also that goes with this whole ant computer, octopus, like other ways of sensing or other ways of representing that are post literate, right? Oh, how do we represent you? Well, we represent you as an abstracted aggregation of colorful crystalline shapes. And so I can look at a glance at you that you're mostly green with a little blue. And so I have an idea of what that is. And the AI, like that's an AI language. Like that's how an AI would look at a person. An AI would look at a person like you're this sort of assortment of crystalline structures, not as like a human. That's, I don't know, like that's the way it feels to me.
Yeah, totally. And he even talks about that here in a minute about like just like creating like the visuals. I mean, not exactly the way you put it, but you know,
like me,
you know, looking at it like as the visual representation of what your human capital portfolio looks like, what your skills portfolio looks like.
So now that you have that little piece of grounding, there's only one more piece of grounding that I'll put forth, and that is this idea of role when I talk about a role. If you think role and job description, you're 95% of the way there. All a role is a codification of skill, knowledge, attribute portfolio. You hope one human can embody to create value, to actually put that into motion to create some value. And sometimes that's one role. Sometimes it's a multi-incumbent role where you have many, many people doing the same role. The concept works just the same.
Well, I think too about like role playing games, you know, like
yeah,
you have to embody this role. Like this is the role you're playing here.
So let me take you into the future a little bit. So kind of put yourself here. You have to present to your senior stakeholders some version of skill portfolio state of the union. How's it going? What is this current skill map? Maybe I'm going to show them that. We'll show you an idea of what that looks like. Maybe we see an emerging skill on the horizon and we want to know the degree to which we have it today. That'd be good. Then we're going to look at role conversions. We know that roles are dying and roles are coming on.
That's a
How might
cell.
we attack that problem?
Think
and then
about
there's this
that
other
in
thing,
terms of the
like
body.
a rest.
Like cellular replication, right? Certain cells dying, certain cells being remade. Like to me, that sounds like a biological process.
Yeah, totally. And the thing is, they can program it at will. So it's like he talks about like, oh, this is the new skill.
We need a new liver over there. All of y'all who used to do this, you got to do that.
Yeah. So there's just like this massive steering.
That kidney so last year. We're moving it over to this. You know?
State of conscious competence, which is a really kind of an interesting thing to think about. And I'll tell you what that means a little bit when we get there. So imagine that you are our senior stakeholders, and here we go. Let's take this first use case. We want to have a look at the state of skills in any given population inside our company. So let me tell you how to read this map. This was inspired by the smart money market map. I think that thing is defunct, which is heartbreaking. But the basic idea here is if you sort of, imagine you're flying a plane, right, over the landscape and you see farmlands, big patches of different things. This is your high altitude view of the unit of measure that you have selected. So in this particular example, I've chosen the US Consumer Bank. You can fill in the gaps for yourself, like what might that unit of measure be for you? And you can see in this skill map, the size of the box depicts the degree to which that skill is present. Roughly how much of it do you have? The color depicts the quality of that skill.
So getting into the quality, like how do they measure the quality of the skill? And you find out that a lot of these measurements are just total bullshit anyways. So it's, I mean, the thing is, there's so much fraud.
Your skill sector is dead. Like we've decided that your skill sector is now dead. So it doesn't matter if you're really good quality. If you're like, nope, you're obsolete.
Yeah, the quality or not. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and I just want to say, like, I think Quantum Heart Cafe said something about like clustering employees to create emergent behaviors and like topology. And so I think in that, I agree, this idea of needing to create global entities, multinational, like think about globalization, right? Like there aren't companies that are really, I mean, again, I'm not trying to be nationalist, but like there used to be companies that like, this is an American company, this is a Japanese company, this is a German company, like now they're just companies. They're just, I mean, they may have a little bit leaning in more to one or the other. And then once they get the natural language processing, they can have collaboration through remote virtual spaces across their company around the world. So if they're trying for some emergent behavior and they're trying to map their skills, and once they get these virtual rooms that have the automatic language processing kind of stuff, they could very easily dial up in this some sort of metaphysical alchemical process, like this optimum group of people to work together. And so their palette is much bigger if they have this vast, and everyone has a digital ID, everyone's being tracked all the time, everybody's like accounted in the topology. The idea that you have coworkers that are in your proximal space that you have longstanding relationships with, that might be good for you emotionally and to your mental health, but it sucks if what they're trying to do is catalyze some emergent consciousness idea.
Right.
So, they're going to lean into the next model, which is contingent, global, and at will for like limited tasks. And again, everything you hear them say is about faster, faster, faster. Don't think just go fast. And so you're not even going to have a chance to pause. You're just going to be thrown into whatever the next scenario is.
Right. But do we get a lay to wear around our neck?
They all look so sad. Like it's kind of funny. Like they don't look happy, and then they.
Oh no! And I wish the video quality were better because you can't really, even the speakers, you can't really see their faces. Because I like looking at, you could get from looking at people's expressions like that. I wish they'd had a better video production.
And then sometimes you'll see some gray boxes in here. So that would be like our slow signal strength. You got some of this out here in your portfolio, but we haven't been able to validate it. We don't really know the quality of that particular skill.
We haven't validated. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Like the AI isn't quite sure where y'all are at.
We know it's there, but we're not exactly sure what it looks like.
Now, what would you, if this was your actual skill map, here's just a couple things we can infer right away. Well, let's start with the good news. Retail bank products, we have a good amount of knowledge, and it's green. Sales model, that's good. You'd want that. But oh my goodness, look at our risk management box. Yeah, we got a lot of it, but the quality sucks.
You know what we need? We need some skills training here.
I mean, just
so you can
I just keep thinking about like annual reviews, like even this idea of, and like what that's going to be with AI, and it's going to be like every week.
And how removed this is
validated
from just like the human, it's so removed from life. It's so crazy.
I know. Well, I have to say, like, I mean, again, and no offense against this particular person, I doubt she would ever watch this video, but like a year or so before I ended up leaving my previous job that I'd been at for 17 years. And we're like a small but growing like nonprofit, this botanical garden. And we got a human resources person. And as soon as the human resources person came on the scene, then all of like the informal personal like flexibility of understanding like your circumstances of like your parents get sick or your kid or you're this or like it was much more fluid as far as people like knew each other and covered for each other and like made stuff happen. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as there was like the binder and the employee manual and the things and all that stuff, and then the person whose job was to make sure the things, and then it just got more and more like
removed.
Like I mean, and the thing is that it was a perfectly nice person, but it became a process. It like became that we were living within the constraints of this 3-ring binder or whatever, like the online version of the 3-ring binder was. And then once the lockdowns hit, like, you know, then essentially it's ruled by human resources because all of the dictates came down through the human resources. Thou shalt blah, 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 blah. And it was like miserable. And it's just, I can't imagine, like I chafed against that, not because of, you know, the person was nice enough, but the entire system of how it was set up. Imagine that with like much more invasive, much more automated, much more removed from anything of what you are, your humanity. It just
when even there, at least you had a person with a binder. This is just the binder says no. But yeah, this is like that times 1,000.
Yeah.
No, not good.
So you can understand, just let your imagination run wild with the possibility.
Oh, let me bring it up again. Sorry.
Just let your imagination run wild.
Let's just get crazy. We got lays on. Let's get crazy here. Let's just imagine here.
Dance on the tables, guys.
Oh yeah, I want to see the after party on this one.
With the possibility of having something like this, even if the data isn't that great, at least it gives you a place to hunt. Later on, I'm going to introduce.
Yeah, give you a place to hunt.
Can you imagine hunting? I'm hunting grade quality risk assessments.
As I'm hunting wabbit, I'm hunting skills.
This idea of a skills portfolio management office, which doesn't really exist anywhere that I've been able to find, but it's a necessary condition for all this to take shape.
So the skills portfolio office is, I guess, going to replace the human resources person with the binder. But he says this is necessary. We need this for this to take place. So
we'll talk about that in a minute. But your skills management office tells you there's an emerging programming skill called Julia coming on fast, man. And they understand that strategically it's important to your company. So they very naturally go and maybe click on the IT department breakout view to see.
So the people tell you that there's this new skill coming online. They're like, let me go check my portfolio management office.
The extent to which this thing, Julia, exists. So you click on it and boom.
Boom.
Watch out.
So you click on it and boom. Just to the right here, you see, here's my skill map. It's a good thing you got a lot of systems engineering, then it's green. You'd hope to see that. Python, of course. And sure enough, there is Julia. It appears. Small amount, unvalidated. And just with this data alone, you can begin to think, well,
so
what am I going to do about this?
Jason, about the whole validated? Is there something about a protocol? Like that feels like a technical term, this thing validated. Like,
yeah.
It feels like a circuit or something that is like a technical aspect. That doesn't, none of that seems natural that you would have a skill that needs to be validated. That somehow it's like,
well, yeah. I don't understand how you could have the skill and have it had not been, you either have it or you don't. It's either, how could it be on record as being there, but unvalidated? That's an interesting question. I'm not sure how that works.
I mean, he seems very fixated on the validation. So that feels like there's a technical component to that.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking validation in terms of like the certification. You've taken the test, you've passed the test, and therefore we can validate it or something. That's what I thought, but I'm not exactly sure.
Think, well, what am I going to do about this? Am I going to buy it with humans? Am I going to buy more of it with machines? Am I going to develop it in my own shop? How am I going to go after this?
Am I going to buy it with humans? Like, I don't, I'm trying to wrap my mind around, like, what do you mean by
more
that?
Julia. How many few people does that cost? I need
I'll,
more
I'll,
Julia.
I'll trade you three Excel Word certificate validations and 4 for, like, what are you because that's what I was thinking, like, are they planning on like having these tradable markets around skills? It's kind of interesting.
Yes, they do. That's the income sharing agreements and stuff.
Yeah.
That's all the stuff that they're going to securitize.
Yeah. Kate says your school certification company goes bankrupt, you lose the credentials. Well, not if it's on blockchain. They want it to be on blockchain.
Yeah, that's blockchain. They use all of that, like all of those schools that went bankrupt, especially a lot of those like for-profit.
Yeah, they'll use that as an excuse of why we need this system. Yeah,
yeah. So
exactly.
you don't lose it.
You're never going to lose it.
You don't even actually have
even if you want to lose it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's your half finished.
You can value the skill in at least 2 dimensions. You can value the skill premium for a specific role, like if this particular skill is added to a role, how much more does that demand in the marketplace? And you can therefore also infer what the cost of adding X amount of that skill is in your portfolio. So there's a financial dimension here.
Like, this
that
is
is
just
actually
setting up
not that hard to get at.
This isn't real. Like, none of this is really
how
it works. This is simply all to create the dynamics for these gambling markets in human capital.
Well, if you think about it, Wall Street's not real. Wall Street's not real. Like, the whole thing is a fiction. It's this gambling that's built. That's what I'm always having these arguments with people about the idea of capitalism versus markets. I'm like, there's this thing on top of, like, actually they're thinking of like, oh, I built the thing and then I went and sold it, whatever, like a real market, like buying and selling real goods. I'm like, no, there's this thing on top of that's all fiction that we treat like it's real.
Like,
but
look, we have a diagram. It has colors on it.
You can see
say
the
gray
colors.
or green or whatever. We put a language to it. We say we need more Julia. We're going to pay for it with human tokens and a few machine tokens on top it off, and what, like, it's all a story, but none of it's real.
Yeah. Yet it affects our lives in a real way. Because I always tell people money's not real, and they're like, "What do you mean? If I don't have money, I can't do this." I'm like, "Yeah, but there's reasons for that because people have bought into the story, and there are people that will use violence to enforce this fiction." But the money itself isn't real. It's not.
Although it's right now it's a kind of more art than science, but it's certainly there, and you can get a directional indication.
It's more art than science.
I think it's chalk behind him. Someone was asking what's behind him. It's chalk. Although it does look like he's being impaled a little bit.
Yeah, well, you're going to get impaled with the chalk if you don't have the right skills.
Now we're going to switch gears. Now we're going to think about roles. We're going to think about roles. So remember, a role is just a codification of skills, knowledge, and attributes in one person or for multi-incumbent roles. And and you've seen this already, there are role types that are declining. They're becoming less important because they're not relevant and/or machines can take them over. Wagon wheel manufacturing, buggy whip makers are really.
Oh, that's an interesting example. Like, I've been like wagon wheel. You and your wagon wheel.
Cybernetics, yeah.
A more recent version, anything that requires a lot of manual paper pushing, like mortgage processing, those things are just sort of going away.
Going away.
Well, the mortgage processing isn't. It's just AI is gonna screw you over with your mortgage.
Yeah, and I think he means they're going away in terms of actual human capital, as far as human capital is concerned.
And that's a good thing. But people regenerate and things regenerate, and we want to take advantage of that. This is where this gets a little audacious here. So before you have an emotional reaction, just wait till I get to the end of the slide, and I'll do all the necessary disclaimers. If we know A, B, and C.
That doesn't sound good.
No.
1,273 people occupy those roles, declining roles. And we also know that there's a new emerging role type. We'll just call it emerging role type D. Prompt engineer. How's it going, huh?
So prompt engineer, that's basically what they're calling someone that just asks the GPT and tries to refine questions to the GPT or the whatever AI they're using.
Well, how many of those 1,273 people might be fit for purpose for the new emerging role type D?
Fit for purpose.
So the first thing I would do if I had a magic machine, I would ask it for this first
there we go.
attribute profile. Of the 1,273 role occupants of the declining roles, we know that emerging role type D requires a couple of specific attributes. I would query the 1,273 to find those attributes, because in my view, attributes are more durable than skill acquisition, so I want to look at that first. That narrows my population to 8.
Yeah, go for it.
So I just want to mention that part of the competency-based education and the work-based learning and the mastery transcripts and all of that is linked to this partnership for 21st century skills. So again, skills. That goes back to Ken Kay in the early 2000s. Like, he was a big lobbyist for the tech companies, like a select group of tech companies. So Ken Kay was like lining up all of the education. Like this is at least 30 plus years in the making. So he was lining this all up, partnership for 21st century skills. And then that group folded and got sort of subsumed within Battelle for kids. And again, Battelle is the entity that helped build Oak Ridge National Labs, and it manages a lot of Department of Energy labs. And it's kind of crazy to think that somehow a Department of Energy, like defense contracting entity, which is it's based in Ohio, is somehow involved in K-12 education.
Yeah.
But it is. And their big shtick, what they talk about besides the 21st century skills, is a portrait of a graduate. So they're going all over the country. And if you pay attention in your local school district, they're probably saying, like, we need to outline a portrait of a graduate. Well, why would, again, this Department of Energy aligned entity be in charge of, like, supposedly asking the local people what their portrait of a graduate looks like? But when I'm hearing him talk about roles and attributes and sorting things out for these new skills, that's what it is. Like, they're representing that diagram of the people, that vague outline of the people with the little crystalline light structures in them. That's the portrait of a graduate.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think it's actually the same colors that Battelle uses.
Oh, really?
Like orange, blue, and green, or something like that. Like, it's kind of a weird color set, and it's the same thing. Now, and again, the Department of Energy is involved in the Japan Moonshot Project, which means we all become avatars by 2050. So I just want to sort of draw that connection through, that when he's talking about attributes and roles, I think it goes directly back to competency-based education, digital wallets, mastery transcripts, and social emotional skills, all representing you as an asset class of attributes.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Good
Portrait
reminder.
of a graduate. Hear it.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that before, and Battelle too. It's like
812. Then I'll run another filter for the actual presence of some skills that might be transferable. Now we're down to 476. Then I want to know from that group who's indicated a motivation to move. This is for our talent friends, because we know that if you have indicated a motivation to move, you're probably going to be more successful in the role. And then I want to run a magic equation that tells me what the success probability 1 year hence is of those 319, and that pops out 217 people.
So the idea that they're going to just like
they're winnowing down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And precise, like literally just give you a number, like this is exactly the number of people that.
Like, it started out at like 1,200, right, or something, and now they're down to 200.
Yeah, right? I didn't catch the.
Yeah, a magic. They keep saying magic over and over again. That's really messed up. Okay.
For my HR and legal and employee relations friends, there must not be anyone in here because that would have gotten a laugh.
I didn't get that joke. But
a lot of problems with this algo bias.
A lot of problems with this the algorithm bias. Yeah. So he's saying that,
he's not saying he's not going to do it, though.
No, not at all. They're absolutely going to do it. He says there's a lot of problems with this in terms of the algorithm bias.
This gets kind of scary.
People
don't trust this. So what I'm not saying is that only the 217 should have access to emerging role type D. Of course not.
That's actually precisely what he's saying. I mean,
Yeah.
give me
Yeah,
a break. Like you're going to employ this computer to give you all this data, and then you're
And then
just
you're
not
not gonna pay attention
not
to
going
it.
to take its advice. I talked to somebody at the Smart Cities conference that happened in Denver recently, and they were talking about digital twinning, and she was going on and on about, no, but it's open source. It's okay because it's all open source. Like we can see the data. I'm like, well, you don't even know. You don't have the capacity to even like know what the heck's going on. Like you can't process this thing. And I'm like, you're not going to spend the money on the software and then use it and then not take its advice, but and you have no way to audit it. And it's already a given that this is whatever the computer tells you to do, that's what you're going to do. The computer says yes.
All I'm saying here is that it gives us a sense of our embedded resource that we might have a chance of converting. That's it.
A resource that you can convert. That's disgusting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a sick way to view human beings.
To the people, and so I think that this speaks to the dehumanization of the K-12 education process. Mm-hmm. Because if this is how you intend to treat adult people, right? Like as a resource to be converted, you're going to have no problem putting a 3-year-old on a surveillance play table. Because you're just like, of course we're training them to be the resource that's converted when they're 32.
Yeah.
Like, of course
people within that space are like, we want these people to actually have a career and be able to pay their mortgage and everything. And that's how they justify it. It's like, well, you need money to live, and we're just helping them to their path to be able to make a living, and that's the beginning and the end of it. Yeah. Yeah, I know.
How much longer does he go on? I'm tired of him.
And it's funny, this particular last one, success probability at 1 year, I haven't found many people in the middle on this one. I talked to folks, and these are like the leading people in the world on this stuff.
I can go fast.
Say, that is crazy.
Oh. I'm sorry, maybe I should be more patient.
So he was talking about something called the resting state of consciousness. I don't know how necessary this one is.
And you're probably not.
So
but you're about to see an unbelievable achievement that I've never done in public, which is to overcome my imposter syndrome and try to explain this.
Did you hear what he just said?
Overcome his imposter syndrome.
I'm going to overcome my imposter syndrome. And that's what's funny, because like so many of these people are imposters. Like this is all bullshit, but they've got they've got billions of dollars, and they've got a room full of people. So I feel bad that he has an imposter syndrome. But he's overcoming it.
To you, when the founder and architect of this thing is sitting right in front of you. So please give me grace and mercy, and you can come up later and tell me what I did wrong. This idea of resting state of conscious competence, let me explain this to you, because I have not seen this discussed anywhere else, and I just think it's fun. So here we go. There's a few ways to get at this idea of what is your sort of state of conscious competence in your organization, at least get a sense of how it feels. Up to this point, we've been very high level. Right now, I want to get down to the granular level, the blade of grass, learning objective view of how fit you might be at a specific learning objective level. But how you get at this data, you have to understand at least a little tiny bit of it. So at City, we use an adaptive learning platform called Area 9, and Ulrich, all kidding aside, is here. This is his company. And as the learner moves through that learning event, they not only answer the prompts like we've all been used to, they also indicate their degree of confidence in the answer. So as you can see here, so they might say the answer is B, and then they say, I know it, I think I know it, I'm not sure I know it, and I have no idea. So just sit in that for a minute. Very different experience. Now in the back end, the machine, like it knows the rightness or wrongness of the answer, juxtaposes that against the level of confidence, time vectors, other cool things, some black box things that we don't know about.
I'm curious about the black box things that we don't know about. What's that all about?
That's the time machine.
And what it does is, for the learner, is that it customizes a path through the material, a more efficient path, because it'll over-index on the things that they don't know.
I'll go fast on this one.
On the things that they do. But the benefits go well beyond that. As the, now, and I should finish with this. When the learner exits that event, they exit at a state of conscious competence. Okay? Threshold level conscious competence. So that's good. But there's a lot of interesting data that come up during the rollout period. Let's call it a 30-day rollout period. And as a percentage of responses, you can look at your group in the 4 levels of competence. Competence. How many, or what percentage of the responders are consciously competent, consciously incompetent, or incompetent, unconsciously incompetent, so on and so forth. It's a tongue twister.
I don't even get
So that is a concept. It stands to reason that if you're investing heavily in a certain learning objective that you want to play through, you want to see how this is moving through your organization. I'll give you a specific example. Let's say we're taking a psych safety bet, right? We really think that the presence of psychological safety in our organizations creates great things.
Actually, I'm going to pause there because he does. This is interesting. He says,
we really think that the presence of psychological safety in our organizations creates great things.
So I think that idea, like we need to create psychological safety. So what does that entail? What's all involved in?
I guess you have like guardrails that tells you what's safe and what's not safe, and then you're always being watched to make sure that you. Is this like the non-triggering, like trigger warning? Don't be careful. I might say or do something like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Or just, I don't know. I'm not exactly sure.
We don't have time to dig into all that, but that is actually how I feel, and it's important. And then at the learning objective level, at minimum, you would want your population to be able to define psychological safety, to identify the conditions necessary to create high and sustainable levels of it, and so on and so forth. And when you start down this road, at the end of the deployment, you can look back on the rollout period and see that your state of conscious competence, year 1, resting state, beginning state, was pretty low. And then you farm into your place more and more of this. Yes, the population changes, and maybe you do a second rollout 6 months hence or a year later, and you can take the temperature and see that the resting state of conscious competence now in this example goes up. And that gives you some level of confidence that this is starting to get through. So that's it. So blade of grass, high level. You can just see there's 10 other examples we could have given. We just wanted to spark your thinking as to
I probably should have cut that out. I don't really get what he's saying there.
The realities of this whole idea, because it's really cool to just talk about. Really fun to write a cool paper.
I'm going to just jump ahead a little bit.
How many humans do we need, with what skill, where, and when? But the first question is typically how many humans do we need? Versus what skills do we need, where, and when? It changes everything when you ask that question first. And this is to not demonize the human first.
What skills do we need, where and when? Yeah, but see, the thing is, like, the where doesn't matter because it's going to be piloted robots. So it's the where doesn't really matter. It's just, it's everywhere and nowhere at the same time.
Right. Then he says, like, this isn't to demonize. How does he?
And this is to not demonize the human first. That humans are the ones that imbue this stuff. They put it in motion. They create value, right? Just because you know something doesn't mean you do it. But it resides in us. But that barrier is about to break down. It has broken down. Because now the question is not only, the reason the skill question first is the better one, is that certainly humans are going to be a part of it, but machines are also a part of it, as either a replacement or some kind of an augmentation.
Certainly humans are part of the machines? Did he say that?
Yeah, let's see.
The question first is the better one, is that certainly humans are going to be a part of it, but machines are also a part of it, as either a replacement or some kind of an augmentation to the human. So you miss that, you're going to miss all kinds of other competitive advantage.
That's the biohybrid computer.
Yeah.
Like that's the biohybrid computer, yeah.
An office of skills management is something to consider. I mean, who in your organization right now would be thinking about what does the taxonomy should look like? What is that thing? How do I know what emerging skills are coming? How can I routinize that? How do I know what skills are dying? How do I routinize that? How do I know what skills are ripe for machine augmentation or takeover? How do I know that? Skill profile generation.
How do we know it? We'll tell you.
Here's another concept, right? For any role, multi-incumbent role or otherwise, you might want to have a gold standard skill profile, and you can query your state of capability against. Well, who's generating that? How do you generate it? Where does it reside? Assessment methodology. If you talk to people, and they're talking about putting this in motion in their company, and you want to check the vulnerability of their thinking, go here first. What is your assessment methodology to codify the quality of that skill? Outside of the mindset shift that I mentioned earlier is the primary.
I just don't even see how how this even fits into running a company. Like I just don't.
That's what I'm saying. Like they said that the
like thousands of people just to manage the skills. Like I don't think that
this is why they kept saying that they're having a hard time getting the employers to like jump on board.
Like why would they want to do that?
Yeah.
Like you'd have to like hire 20% more people just to like watch skills and manage skills and all this stuff. It just seems like such bull.
Yeah. Then they're going to have to create other ways to incentivize the companies in order to do this because they're not going to want to do it on their own.
Here's the second biggest one. The trust in what you're going to do with my skills data. I'm shocked by this. Because in my mind, and this shows my naivete, I was like, well, what do you mean, what are we going to do with it? It's a development thing. We would never do anything negative with this. But they're thinking,
we
well,
might just kill off your whole division and sort you through an algorithm and say that only 1 in 5 of you gets a new job.
Yeah, no,
You just
he's
said
like,
it, dude. You already just said exactly what you're going to do with the skills.
yeah,
Come
no,
on.
he's not a very good salesman. He's like, what am I going to do? I don't understand. Why are people concerned?
Are you going to use it to rate me? You going to use it to comp me? You going to use it to fire me? You going to use it to promote me?
Yes.
And the level of suspicion, maybe it's just my company, but I would guess no. I would guess this is more pervasive. Trust. So
why would we trust the system? Why would we? There's no reason that we would trust the system.
Right.
Like no reason whatsoever.
And again, I'm actually like, it makes me happy that there are
hyper competition and scarcity.
Yeah. Well, I think it's good at least that there's some people in the business world that are like, they have their own issues and stuff that they're dealing with, but at least there's it sounds like they're lacking the trust that they want and need in order to really advance this in a lot of larger employers. So
let's say you've perfectly inferred a skill set. Now, how do you judge the quality? Maybe you do it all through inference. Maybe it's all passive. But if you start to involve other factors in, be it just a self-assessment, well, that's good. That's fairly easy to do. Data quality, not so good, but it's okay. Layer atop of a manager assessment, cool. Peer assessment, maybe technical test, a third-party observation, inference, cross-referencing, all good and fine. But you have to pick, because each one of those phases, while it might give you more fidelity in your data, it also introduces new complexities and tons of cost. Deciding what your Likert scale is going to be, massive.
I'll speed it up.
It's a huge debate with my people. Is it a binary scale? Got it? Don't got it?
I'm tired of him.
Is it grade 8 to 5 points or 8 points?
Sorry.
I can jump ahead.
No, that's okay. I just don't know if I have anything more to add about the skill stuff. It's like,
yeah, there is one last segment here that I have with a panel, and then we're done. Can you stick around just a little bit longer?
Okay, it's 10:30
Hang
over
on,
here.
man.
Well, if you need to leave, I can finish it out if you want. Like I can just
No, that's okay. I don't want to. I mean.
Yeah, I know it's late for you. That's fine.
Skill set. You want to actually anchor it for 8 points, like, and maybe have a personalization and contextual awareness of, and your systems, capital S systems, aren't tuned to the behavioral outcomes you want. It doesn't matter how much you train, you're creating other roadblocks for yourself. So in my future world, some kind of an aid to analyze all the internal blocks would certainly be there, and the internal to your company, and then inside the human blocks, it's a propensity to act would be there. Because imagine a world where I can show you the skills map, and also say, inside this universe, the propensity to act is X, because it gives you a better sense of what actually might flow through into actual action, and therefore value for your client. And then here's the other one. This is a real killer.
Okay, so I will
of connections.
Maybe just make sure.
Here's what I mean by this. You'll remember in the grounding section, I had two of those little humanoids next to each other. This person plus this person equals a certain skill, knowledge, and attribute profile. Good and fine.
Oh wait, this one I do want to do because he talks about the alchemy. This is the alchemy thing.
Okay.
And then here's the other one. This is a real killer. I mean, this would be fun if it could do.
The real
This
killer.
idea of alchemy, of connections.
Wow.
Here's what I mean by this. You'll remember in the grounding section, I had two of those little humanoids next to each other.
Humanoids.
This person plus this person equals a certain skill, knowledge, and attribute profile. Good and fine. But there's some magic in the human that when you get together, the 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, it equals 3. You're more than the sum of your two parts. And I can imagine a world where if I can look at my skill map, and I can look at it at sort of an atomical level, and if I could somehow factor in the alchemy too, that this thing plus this thing equals a brand new thing that doesn't necessarily exist in any one person. Mind blower. Huge. Crazy,
that's emergent.
Maybe.
I mean, that's what they're
but
trying
fun
to
to
get
think
at.
about.
This complex systems, complex multi-agent systems. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I thought that the alchemy piece is important too, because I do think that they want to try to figure out. They want to study, like, I think they're doing that with the social media space. Like just looking at how people, communicate with one another and whatnot. Or So there's just one last section here is just from the Q&A or it was a panel. Everybody had breakout sessions and then they had discussions, and these are the people from all the different breakout sessions. Yeah, this is the Palooza part.
there's a lot of skepticism from the your upper level leadership, as well as with the employees. Like our speaker said, right? There's a lot of people don't trust us with their skills, so they don't want us to connect to performance. That's another thing. When you start connecting these skills to performance, it becomes a different issue. It's no longer a learning issue anymore. And so keeping those separate becomes a really important thing, right? HR folks, seem to always want to put skills and performance together.
Do not cross-pollinate performance ratings and that type of thing with your skill strategy. It will be the death knell of your approach. So there you go.
A second.
So I thought that was really interesting how like they were really basically they're admitting that the thing's bullshit, because they're saying you might have like the thing says that you have the skill, and then the employer actually puts you to do the thing and you don't know how to do it, or vice versa, you know how to do something that it doesn't. So he knows that the skills, your skill portfolio is not going to match up with people's actual performance. They're basically admitting here that this.
But at the same time, though, he spent all that time talking about quality.
Yeah, no.
So how are you measuring the quality of the skill if it isn't linked to performance? Like that, you have a super come on. Of course they're integrated.
Yeah.
That's just that's a fake out. I mean,
well, what do you think that was? I mean, in terms of like, because there's, two people said that. It's like, we don't, he says this is going to destroy it if we connect these things.
Good. Like, try it and let's just drop the whole thing. Like, let's make sure that like nobody wants to do it.
Yeah,
I think that sounds like a plan.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
A second big category was, and I really liked this thought from someone in the group back here about how we could use coaching and AI as our non-judgmental, skilled colleague, which I thought was a very interesting way to think of it. And that might actually reveal more incompetence, because you're afraid to say I'm incompetent in something, but if it's just a prompt on a screen, you might be more willing to admit your incompetence. And so therefore we'll
Can I say something about that?
Yeah, go for it.
Gosh, I think so. There was a book I read a while ago called the Friendly Orange Glow, and it was about Play-Doh, which was one of the first EdTech platforms. That I think it was like out of the University of Chicago, like Urbana-Champaign or whatever. It was early, and like the Navy was developing it. And it was essentially like the Play-Doh learning platform. It was interesting because it had a lot of capacity. This was in the 60s of like early chats and early text messaging and bulletin board technology, that the people who knew how to code it was really interesting for them because it had a lot of the possibilities on the back end, the people who had the skills to actually manipulate it, but on the front end, it was really kind of boring. And so like to the people who knew how to actually build this stuff, it was kind of cool and exciting, but the people who actually had to interface with the technology found it deadly dull. And it was interesting because some of the earliest models, surprise, surprise, Quantum Heart Cafe has been looking into this stuff about like institutionalization, both like of, people with mental disabilities or mental health or in carceral environments, that they always experiment on those people, right? In these closed communities. And so with Play-Doh, one of the first deployments was in prisons. And what they would say is, so the problem with prisons is that there's a culture that nobody wants to look smart in the group, because if you look intelligent, then you get bullied. And so we can't teach people. We accomplish our goal better if we individualize the learning and have all these independent learners on a machine, because they're more willing to show where they are to a machine than they would be in public to their peers, because there's some sort of like threat aspect to it, or either they're embarrassed or that they're not smart enough, or they're too smart and they want to play dumb and all of this stuff. So isn't it so much better that we do this all through the technology, and then we meet people where they are, right? And it's a secret, it's only between you and the machine.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to hear that narrative, because I'm like, wow, that goes back to the 1960s. Like that goes back to the early Play-Doh deployments in the prisons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you've got this non-judgmental little friend.
Yeah.
What I guess, it sounds like they're having they've been having a problem with people not being honest in their little quizzes or whatever that they're giving them. the polls that they're taking. So I'm always delighted when I hear that they're having challenges.
Yeah.
Scale efficiently on skill building because people will trust.
Oh, let me switch it. There we go.
Will trust if they trust their colleague. Big concerns about trust.
And again, their colleague. She says their colleague. She's talking about the AI.
Big concerns about trust. So if we think we have trust issues now, wait until we have, trust issues with what people are using the information in generative AI to do.
So that was interesting. If you think we have trust issues now, wait till they see what people are doing with this. So
yeah.
That was.
Well, and I just want to say, like, these tricky algorithms. So, so I don't get a ton of comments on my videos, the things outside the chat, it's pretty, relevant. And again, I'm not a super dynamic responder on the comments, so I get it. But on the RF Kennedy Jr. one recently, there were more comments, and it's interesting because they weren't actually bad comments, but someone was sort of poking at me, you need to do an interview on my channel. And I'm like, I'm not really doing interviews anymore, but here's all the material. You feel free to talk about it. It'd be great if other people talked about it too. Here's all the links. And then this person came into my email and was and I noticed in that particular set of comments that things were disappearing overnight. Now, sometimes I actually do remove comments. I have to say, if people are junky or whatever, whatever. It's not often, but I admit that I do that, but I wasn't doing it on that thread. But things were still disappearing, even within a few hours. I would see something and then it would go away, but I didn't do it.
Yeah.
And then I would check the held for review if you have certain things they flag as spam or if it has a link. And I was going back regularly and checking to make sure I could pull things over. And so the person got really mad. They're like, oh, you, and I was kind of just blunt. I said, I'm not doing an interview, but you can do it. And they're like, no, you should do it. I'm like, I'm not doing it. Come on. Right. I've done enough. I did the first thing. You can do your own work. But then they came in and they're like, oh, you removed my comment, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, I actually didn't. There was something weird going on in the comment of that video. I could tell, but thanks for asking me first. They asserted I did and copied a bunch of people on that I have no idea who they were. So it was a trollish, problematic behavior, but there isn't trust in these algorithms. There's no reason we should trust these algorithms. Yeah. I think it's very clear, even at the most basic level, we can't even trust the algorithms within the chat box, let alone your job performance review.
Yeah.
So how are they even going to imagine that we're ever going to trust this stuff?
Yeah, I've seen so many weird things over the years on YouTube and Facebook and different places, and just where I've seen stuff disappear in real time. We're like, no, that was just there, and then you're like, did they delete? You're thinking, did the person delete it? Did the algorithm delete it? Or what? How that happened?
Is it there for somebody else to see and I can't see it?
Yeah,
which is what you used to have.
And I know you can report other people too. So maybe there was another person that reported it, and then this computer automatically deleted it. Who knows how all that works? But there's this whole behind the scenes thing, and this isn't. They say it's open source. It's not auditable. There's nobody that's going to have the capacity, and let alone there's not going to be funding.
How would you even prove what happened?
Right.
There's no paper trail. There's no
Well, there is actually. I thought about the thing with Facebook for particularly if there were resources put into it, there's actually a way, because you'd have to do a screen record and then there's a lot of ways you could actually show the shenanigans that most of us know, or a lot of us know are going on, but haven't been able to prove it. But with the right resources, but I'm so sure you're going to have a university put resources into actually studying this in a methodical way. That's not going to happen.
Well, and I mean, I'm sure some people would be like, well, you shouldn't be on YouTube because they do this, and you should be on my channel, which does this better or whatever. But I'm like, I think they all do.
It's all bad.
We're just being shuffled from one platform to the next. That's what I'm realizing is all the deplatforming. It was just okay, so now you're going to do Telegram. So now you're going to do Tumblr. So now you're going to do Rumble. Now you're going to do whatever. There's whatever the newest, now we're going to do Clubhouse. They just move people around to the
Well, it's also a way to, what's the word when you separate things, you put these people over here and you put these, it's a way to not catalog, but
Like
there's a word.
the polarizing or
No, like
sorting?
you're like let's get like sorting. That's the word I was looking
Yeah.
for.
Okay, that's so
It's not a
complicated.
complex word. It's actually sometimes I just can't think of a stupid word.
That's okay.
But it's a way to sort. You think about like and then I'll like okay, and we're going over to Rumble. Okay, we're going over to
Now we're
here
going to go to this. Now
yeah.
we're gonna go to
So
that.
that can be used like as a sorting mechanism.
And like, I'm not like an advocate. I know that there's issues with this platform, but at the same time, like my history, like if anybody wants to pretend that like, imagine that I'm not who I say I am, and like you could see my earliest like little videos of me in Philadelphia City Council, like from 2016, like it's there. So
yeah.
For whatever, but like I would say like don't trust it per se. But
Yeah, absolutely.
There isn't any trust. Like I think coming through this, like most of us realize why we shouldn't trust any of these things.
I should make in 2019, I was pretty much off of Facebook all of 2019 and YouTube and YouTube actually deleted one of my comments or one of my videos, and I was so pissed off. They said it went against their standards, which it totally didn't. And then I appealed it, and they denied my appeal, and I was so pissed. And I was like, I'm done with YouTube, and I deleted over 200 videos, and I filmed myself deleting. So actually my channel, like the whole history, most of my videos actually have been deleted off of so people were like, where'd this video go? I have video of me going through all the videos as I'm deleting them, like going, this is what this was. And but then like what happened was the COVID thing happened, and it actually sucked me back into the Facebook, and then as well as YouTube, because I'm like, I wanted somewhere to talk about this stuff with people. I'm like, yo, there's some shit going on here that we need to talk about. so I kind of get sucked back into it. So like, but even like, I'm not happy about YouTube. I don't see any other, I don't see any other good alternatives though. Like they all suck. And even the ones that have like the token, Odyssey or whatever, which are all like wrapped around like tokenization, it's problematic.
I'm gonna do the token stuff.
So we're almost done. Like we just got like a couple of more minutes here.
And trust that's based on valid concerns like hallucinations. So has it inferred a skill I don't have? Like my bio reads that I graduated from Berkeley, and I've never stepped foot on the campus of Berkeley when I asked ChatGPT to write my bio. So, what?
So you have your own thing about, the chat GPT, but like, yeah, the hallucination, like everybody's just like, it's also funny how they frame that, like that became the language. It's a hallucination.
It's not a hallucination, it's lying.
It's a lie. Yeah. Like, I don't know how the hallucination thing came into, that term became used.
It's on too many psychedelics.
Yeah. Lay off the mushrooms, bro. Yeah. That's too funny.
What inferences can it make that don't make sense? And kind of back to Cameron's point about culture being the hardest thing to go tackle, I think that'll be one of the hardest things to go tackle.
For sure. I just have to say, the only reason I'm saying this is to react to your point. I'm the CLO and the head of performance management for the firm. Mm-hmm. Those of you that grew up in the 70s, you remember that commercial goes, I'm not only the hair club president, I'm the hair club member. No, I can see I'm aging out here. Yeah. The reason I bring it up at all is that.
So actually, I have it cut off here. Anyways, I should have cut it off soon. But anyways, we'll just stop right there. Yeah. So I think we covered a lot of ground. Thank you so much for joining me.
Skills.
Skillapalooza.
Hallucinatory skills.
Well, I'll let you get some sleep, and thank you for joining me in this conversation, and thank you everyone that commented and contributed to that discussion there. And I'll do another one of these soon. And if you check out the ASU GSV Summit, if you actually have the stomach to listen to the talks, that's where they're at. So, all right.